Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special edition of Geeks Who Like Sports Live, episode 105. For those of you watching us live, we are about 15 minutes late. We do apologize. For those of you who are listening to this in the podcast form, we appreciate your continued loyalty. We understand not everybody can be here on a Saturday afternoon, but we do appreciate, no matter how you're joining us, whether you're listening to us on Twitch, whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts after the fact, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, whatever it may be, we are so thrilled to have you here, as always, for Geeks Like Sports, episode 105. As always, I am Ray Carcillo in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Join my best friend in the entire world over in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lee Elias. Lee, how are you doing this Saturday afternoon?
Ray, it's been a great day so far. Our first official live episode. There's no 0.5 at the end of this one. So as you mentioned, super happy to be here live. We will do our best that when we read the comments today for our listening audience that's listening after the fact to say this person has asked a question, but roll with us today because this is the first time we're technically doing this. Ray took my son to his first ever NHL game today. Really first professional game. What's funny about it is that his first game was supposed to be last year against Edmonton. We were going to go see Connor McDavid. First game canceled by COVID. Seriously, just over a year ago. Today I took him to see the Flyers really graciously allow Alex Ovechkin to score multiple goals in the game, thus chasing Wayne Gretzky's goal record. I thought that was incredibly nice of them to let the Capitals win, to let Ovechkin score 2 goals from the exact same spot. At the top of the circle, which he scored 80% of his
so many goals. That's his office. But, that's where he likes to work.
It was a really cool experience to kind of see the game through my son's eyes. You'll follow me here, Ray. That I've worked in the game so long that as much as I love going to games, I don't feel it the same way I did when I was a little kid anymore. Something you do lose after a while, and to see it through his eyes was something really special. So that was a really cool kind of moment today, seeing him cheer on the team and. Going around the stadium, his eyes got real wide when he sees the ice. And then I got to come home and do this with my best friend. Right on time, as we predicted. And here we go. Episode 105. We're here. We're ready to go. Live audience. I'm excited. How are you, Ray?
Yes, I'm doing all right. We did have some technical issues here. Of course, we got them solved. We're getting better. Last week, it took us a half hour. This week, it took us 15 minutes. So we're getting better. We're cutting that in half. Hopefully, in the next few episodes, we'll get it down perfectly.
Next week, we'll be on a few hours earlier.
We already got a lot of comments in the crowd. Well. We got Darkstroke wanting to talk about the Yankees. We got our buddy Matt, of course, talking about, he says, are you teaching Logan how it feels to be a Flyers fan? I mean, clearly, Matt, because the Flyers lost 6-3. And that he's going to have to get used to that a lot if he's going to be a Flyers fan for his life. We've got JC here. It's JC291 saying he couldn't come to the stream last night. Totally okay, buddy. I hope he had a good time. He went to the Bruins game last night, so hope he had a good time. Of course, the Bruins won't stop winning, which of course hurts my Rangers, who are also on a winning streak. We'll get to that later. We have a jam-packed show. We're talking Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We're talking Marvel. We're talking Mortal Kombat. We're talking hockey trade deadline. We got baseball talk, basketball, football, but of course, we are kicking things off today with the biggest event of the week if you're a sports fan. Maybe. WrestleMania! Yes. So, yeah, it was a big week if you're a wrestling fan. We don't do a lot of wrestling on the show because we know it's not everybody's cup of tea.
We do a little more than the average bear. We do some wrestling on the show.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Of course, it's also been harder during the pandemic. The Thunderdome, WWE has not been nearly as good. AEW has already officially
like that.
Yeah,
you can't. You gotta really say it right.
The Thunderdome.
Yeah, but people come here for this, right? They come here for you to say things like that.
I'm sorry. I'm getting better. I apologize, guys. Oh, yeah. The cream of the crop rises to the top. Oh, yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage. He's the superpowers. The Lee Elias. The Ray Carcillo. The Geeks Who Like Sports. All right.
Wait. Who is the coach? Who is the coach of the Oakland, of the Raiders?
Why am
I forgetting his name? Yes. John Gruden. If John Gruden and Randy Macho Man Savage had a kid, that voice you just did was it. There was some crossover there.
I'll take it, I guess. I'll take it. Okay. Close enough. But yes, so already Chris Jericho has already declared victory in the Wednesday Night Wars as AEW has forced NXT off of Wednesday nights. WWE has already thrown up the white flag, for better or worse. But again, this week, the big news, of course, WrestleMania 37. Again, a 2-night event over the weekend down in Tampa, making up for last year's event. And this was... It had a lot of ups and downs, Lee. It had a lot of ups and downs. The big one coming right off the bat is they had to stall a half hour because they did it in an open-air arena, and it decided to pour rain.
In Florida?
In Florida. Who'd have guessed it? Yeah, exactly. In Florida.
What? You know the saying about Florida weather.
So you had a half-hour rain delay of WrestleMania. They were doing interviews behind the scenes. You actually had one of the wrestlers slip on her entrance when the first match started because it was still slick from the rain. Thankfully, she was not hurt because that would have been an absolute disaster for WWE. But yeah, Lee, what are your thoughts at least on the kickoff to WrestleMania? And we'll get into some of the matches as we continue with this topic.
Ray, I lived in Florida and England. You know what they say about the weather in England and Florida?
It always rains?
No, if you don't like it, just wait 20 minutes. Because it changes
exactly,
often.
yeah.
You know, Ray, I didn't get a chance to see WrestleMania. This is what I'll tell you. I think, and this says it all. I didn't hear much about WrestleMania. I did hear about something we're going to talk about, which is several wrestlers being let go after WrestleMania, which is not good that was the main story.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's very true. WrestleMania itself was okay. You had a lot of championships change hand. Omos and Styles. Omos, who's a 7'3" behemoth, had a good in-ring debut. They're the new tag team champions. Shane McMahon, as is now an annual tradition, got thrown off the top of a steel cage. Why at his age he wants to keep doing that, I don't know. I mean, I guess he's an adrenaline junkie, but I'm thankful that he seems to be okay again. Apollo Crews is your new Intercontinental Champion. Rhea Ripley, the new Raw Women's Champion. Bianca Belair, in probably the best match of the whole show against Sasha Banks, is your new SmackDown Women's Champion. Sheamus is the new U.S. champion, and Roman Reigns is actually the only one, I believe, to retain, aside from the Women's Tag Championships. Roman Reigns retains in a triple threat match against Edge and Daniel Bryan, which people said did steal the show. But again, it seemed to be that this both a literal and figurative cloud was over WrestleMania this weekend because of the rain and because of the fact that there's still, even with people there in attendance, there's still obviously that sense of COVID, that it wasn't a true WrestleMania over 2 nights.
And again, you said this about Shane McMahon, just going back to their same bag of tricks, you know, and it's become stagnant. I'm not saying that some of the matches were bad or anything like that, but it's become stagnant. To be fair to them, it is very tough to do this in COVID, and they've tried a lot of new stuffs. But with AEW, who have a clear kind of focus on the actual technical skill of wrestling, right? I think that's one of the things that sets AEW apart from WWE. WWE got lazy with the wrestling side of things, okay? Like, they got way hyped up into the storylines, and rightly so. Like, late 90s, early 2000s, the Attitude Era, I mean, where story was king, right? Like, we didn't, you know, I hate to say this, Ray, but I didn't really care about the wrestling as much as I cared about the characters back then when I was younger. But I think what's happened is that, you know, the wrestling, after what happened with Benoit, you know, when a lot of the athletes had to be off steroids, you know, it was a transition period, you know, for a lot of these guys, and technically things changed. And I think AEW has come with this really great attitude of, look, we're going to make the skill set of wrestling be the thing that shines through, in addition to some engaging characters. And WWE does not seem to really, outside actually the women have been phenomenal. But,
the women's division has actually been terrific, and it has been carrying it. JC291 agrees in chat that the Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks match was great.
The women are still
the women's matches have been consistently better than the men's matches.
Does this mean a Mandalorian is a champion?
No. Sasha, she was the champion. She lost the belt. So technically a Mandalorian was champion, but is no longer champion.
So she had the dark saber. But, you know, WWE is just not the same when it comes to, you know, what we're talking about. And it's going to be interesting to see how this war goes on. Because, like WWE is taking this kind of like, well, we're the biggest thing in town. Like, I don't need to pay attention to them. Like, they better start paying attention, or this is gonna become a problem quickly, especially with what happened after WrestleMania.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to the point again that NXT had to be moved off Wednesday nights because basically they were getting dominated in ratings by AEW. AEW now also smartly doing their other shows just straight to YouTube and is getting huge numbers. Darkstroke also says that WWE is not the same in chat. But yeah, the biggest news post-WrestleMania was not the Raw after WrestleMania. It was the fact that they released 9 wrestlers, and not just any wrestlers. We're talking some huge names here. Former U.S. champion Kalisto, Bo Dallas, of course, son of IRS and brother to Bray Wyatt. And Mickie James, a former women's champion, Peyton Royce, and Billie Kay. This is right after Peyton Royce, by the way, very publicly dropped a quote-unquote pipe bomb and called out WWE for not giving her an opportunity. So she might have dug her own grave there, but it sounds like she wants to go on to bigger and better opportunities anyway. And the biggest one is Samoa Joe, former, of course, TNA champion. He had a couple of brief runs in WWE, but it just felt like they just didn't know what to do with him. They didn't want to let Joe off the proverbial leash and let him be just this Samoan submission machine that everyone knows him to be, just this absolute badass. And it just looks like another veteran wrestler that WWE acquired, especially after the fall of TNA, and just couldn't seem to couldn't know what to do with him, aside from the fact that just like, look at us collecting all these wrestlers now, all these free agents.
Because no Samoan wrestler has ever been successful in the WWE/F. You know, I don't buy that they don't know what to do. I think what's happening here is that the WWE got too used to being the only show in town, and they had a monopoly over the wrestlers, and suddenly there's someplace else to go that's coming up quick, that wants to have a fight. Now, in theory, this should make WWE better. All right? They should batten down the hatches and go, okay, look, we got to write better. We got to do better with our characters. We got to be better with our wrestlers. The iconic wrestlers are all gone. I mean, they really are. No offense to any WWE fan or champion right now. There's no one in WWE that is even close to their all-stars. You know, like when Undertaker left, that was kind of it. They have not had anything since then. Cena's not around, you know, and then I'm not going to go back through the history, but they need to create, they need the next Rock, Austin, Andre the Giant, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. I mean, you could pick whatever you want here. They need their next big name to show up. And the problem is that AEW's got some of the greatest names, and they're gonna, we know Samoa Joe's gonna go right there, and he's gonna work. So there's
a really good chance, that's where Samoa Joe's gonna go,
and it's gonna work because they'll know how to utilize him. To your point, Ray, they'll utilize him correctly. The wrestling fan base isn't
something
dumb.
that AEW does that's very interesting is to make sure that everybody gets airtime, even if they're not wrestling. Is AEW realizes, much like WWE, they've created a very massive roster in a short period of time. But whereas WWE has for many, many years always focused on the individual, in fact, even so much that their best faction in years, the Hurt Business, was disbanded unceremoniously recently. AEW is like, you're in a faction, you're in a faction, you're in a faction. 5 guys, 4 girls, 5 guys. All these different, like, that's not a cheeseburger ad, by the way, although we would love if 5 Guys sponsored us. But like, they're putting all these people in factions, and it's making sure that everybody's getting airtime, even if they're not getting ring time. And it's really a very smart move by AEW. But again, big names. They brought back Sting, Big Show. They brought back all these guys from classic WCW, plus all of these high-flying new youngcomers like Darby Allin, MJF, who are also holding their own and cutting promos. I've told you this. MJF to me is the next Rock, like in terms of what he does on the microphone. Like it's just AEW right now is much better, and it's just a shame that AEW is eating WWE's lunch, and as Matt said in chat, AEW to WWE on your left. We'll get to that later. So it's interesting to see. Hopefully Samoa Joe, wherever he goes, is properly utilized. Again, probably AEW.
Well, and Ray, we should say, too, the other thing that AEW has done so well is understand social media, understand digital media. Like you said, putting a YouTube show out. There's no reason to not do that right now. It is just as powerful as any television network, right? Plus, they probably make money on the ads they're doing. So, like I said, the game is changing, and I have every reason to believe WWE will figure something out. They've been in this position before. But they're gonna like not, no pun intended here. They have to fight. They got to figure it out. They got to get better, right? Again, it'll be interesting to see what happens when the veil of the pandemic is lifted, and they can kind of get back to business. Because COVID shook them up hardcore, and AEW is kind of built for it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, AEW very smartly. The fact that AEW had a stadium at their disposal, like, again, this is just the fact that Tony Khan, who also owns the Jaguars, owns AEW. It was like, it's off season. Come use the stadium. And it was like, it was a bit serendipitous when obviously all the wrestlers left the road, but it still, they handled it. They were able to pivot better than WWE in these times, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now that we're coming out of them. What happens? Sergeant Gibby commenting in chat that the Braves are looking like garbage for the most part, except for Ronald Acuna. We will talk on that later, but before we get to baseball, the other big thing in sports this week is the NHL Trade Deadline. This was a lot of guys went a lot of different places. Just a couple of big ones. Nick Foligno went to the Leafs from the Blue Jackets. Mike Riley went to Boston. Taylor Hall and Lazar also went to Boston. The Flyers sent Eric Gustafson to Montreal for only a 7th-round pick. John Merrill also went to Montreal. Jeff Carter went to the Pens from the Kings. Didn't see that coming. A lot of draft picks. Not a lot of player-for-player kind of things. A lot of draft picks. Coburn went to the Islanders. We talked about the previous Islander trade last week when that happened. Detroit sent Mantha to the Caps. A lot of trade. The Rangers, who are on the bubble, were surprisingly extremely quiet. Lee, what are your thoughts overall on the trade deadlines? What do you think about the Flyers really more acting like sellers at the deadline?
Well, they're not
and what are your
like
thoughts
sellers.
right now?
They're not acting like sellers. They are sellers with where they're at.
Yeah.
Rangers wisely did not make any moves, Ray. Wisely, I think when you look at the New York Rangers this year, there's a lot of reasons that it's a wash, both from what happened with Panarin to a really slow start to had some problems in the locker room. I would not make many changes on that team right now. I think that they look pretty darn good the second half of this season. If you're going to make a trade or a move, you do it in the offseason. Now, with that said, what's not surprising about this offseason is that the top-heavy teams that are really looking to win a cup are making some pretty big splashes, trying to get themselves more fortified for this playoff run. What is interesting is that because the first two of the 4 rounds of the playoffs are interdivision within your division, teams know exactly what they're playing against. So, you figure if you're going to go to the Stanley Cup final, you're going to play 2 of 4 teams that you've been playing all year, right? Mm-hmm. So the first 2 rounds. So teams know exactly what they need. The Islanders know exactly what they need to beat Washington. Boston knows exactly what they need to be competitive. Toronto, really wisely picking up Nick Foligno, a known leader, someone who's going to help them move for the playoffs. Because, again, Toronto, the entire Canadian division this year, it's kind of a phantom division. We don't really know how good Toronto is in context with the rest of the league. We know they're really good when it comes to the Canadian division, right? And I'm looking. I have a feeling that it's going to be Toronto and Edmonton in that semifinal to get to the conference final. But, yeah, look, again, the top teams are getting themselves ready for a top-level Stanley Cup run. This is going to be a very interesting playoffs. The first 2 rounds are going to be bloodbaths in every division. Every division is going to have an amazing first 2 rounds, right? And then you're going to have these 2 rounds of teams who have never seen each other play this season, which means you're going to have a really slow, probably first game, second game before they start to know each other, and all leading up to the Stanley Cup final. So it's just, again, what Boston did was really fortify their lineup. That was really smart. I saw Washington today. They look fine. They look ready to go. They have all the pieces that they need as long as their goaltending is there. And then, again, just keeping it in the Eastern Division real quick. Pittsburgh picking up Carter. It's not a huge move. I don't think this is Pittsburgh's year. But, look, Pittsburgh's going to come down to what Pittsburgh always comes down to is can they get solid goaltending as will Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin show up? If that's the case, they can go as far as they want. But, yeah, out west, when you look at teams like Colorado, they're ready to go. I mean, it's just – what I like about it, what I don't like is having to watch my own team, like you said, be sellers, okay? But what I do like about it is the superpowers of the league this year are powering up even more, which means this is not a playoff year you want to miss, even as a moderate hockey fan, which is it's a very small segment of people. But I think this year's NHL playoffs are going to be really, really good hockey, and I'm actually looking forward to that. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're in that weird spot now. And we did talk about this where there's about 10 to 15 games left that you are starting to see the break now, especially in the Eastern Division. There's just a break in the standings. Like the Rangers and the Flyers virtually have no chance now unless they go on massive winning streaks. But you're seeing this now where we're in that kind of final area where certain teams around that bubble. Some of these divisions are really close. the game is on. The game is afoot, and it's going to be fun to see this come down. We do also have to talk about Matt Cavalieri in our chat said this. The Canucks are missing in the playoffs, but they've got bigger and more tropical fish to fry right now. The Canucks are in deep poop, for lack of a better word. Massive COVID outbreak. Now I'm at the point I'm not so sure they are going to finish the season. And to be fair, look, this is how I look at that real quick, Ray, is that if they don't finish the season and miss the playoffs, that's fine, guys. It's coronavirus, right? If that's the way it is, that's the way it is. And I don't think it has anything to do with the integrity of the game. If I'm sure they'll play again. They were kind of a bubble team. They were right hovering there. But if they miss, they miss. It's the health aspect of it, and you got to let it go.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that was definitely going to be one of our other big stories, is that the season was extended actually a week to try and fit in the rest of the Canucks schedule from May 9th to May 16th. I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I mean, yeah, it's a big deal. Obviously, I mean, Vancouver has now played 7 games less than every other team in the league. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's going to be a lot to make up. And if they're not games that can have playoff implications, I mean, it is what it is. It's just that organization has absolutely been a dumpster fire in terms of handling COVID. They mismanaged it every step of the way, this whole disaster. People are still getting COVID within that organization. They still haven't figured out, it's an absolute cluster up there.
They have the variant too, so they're really sick.
Yeah.
They're really sick. So here's the deal. There's 2 sides to this, Ray, with extending the season. Let's say they come back. Now, my gut tells me they're going to come back, be completely out of shape and exhausted and tank and not do well. But then there's this other side of what happens if they come back and they're really good? And then, they know exactly how many points they need, and suddenly they're surging their way back into the playoffs when they've had this nice rest. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. What I would do is if I was the NHL, is that if I'm extending the league for one team, the season, as soon as they're mathematically eliminated, that would be it. That's the end of the season.
Agreed.
We don't need to keep playing.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? And I think every team would agree with that. And again, integrity of sport is something very important to Ray and I. But you do have to make moves sometimes when things happen. This is one of those things of if a team is eliminated and they didn't finish their season, I don't see how the integrity of the game has been taken away there.
Yeah. I agree. If the Canucks get mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, if they were 1 point out.
If the Canucks get mathematically.
It's one thing.
Yeah, the Canucks get mathematically eliminated. That's it. Their season's done. Right. Let them get their house in order, because it is just an absolute cluster there. Rough. As Matt there, Casey Ledrain87 just showed up cutting his grass. No excuse, Casey. No excuse. No, I'm joking. It's okay, buddy. But yeah, also we've got GLZP wants to talk about the Rangers a little bit here in chat. The Rangers have looked very good, but you have to remember they're playing the Devils right now. The Rangers have won 3 games in a row against the Devils. The Devils have looked, including Shesterkin getting his first 2 career shutouts against the Devils. Actually had a 7-period shutout streak that was broken today. But the Rangers still won 6-3, the same as the Flyers lost. The Rangers are only 4 points back of Boston. Boston has 2 games in hand. The Islanders have lost a couple in a row. GLZP wants to bring that up, but look, the Islanders, they're still 8 points ahead of the Rangers. They're still in second place in the division.
They're fine.
There's 12 games left. I really think it's just there's not enough runway for the Rangers to make up the ground right now, especially again with Boston having 2 games in hand. And Boston, again, Rangers have won 3 in a row. Boston's won 3 in a row. And I've been saying this for a while. I said that the Rangers might win some games, but it's not like Boston is okay. Even if the Rangers go on a winning streak, Boston's not going on a losing streak.
Here's the deal, and this is what's very interesting. The Rangers finish the season with a 2-game stand against Boston. Okay? So you got to figure that if you can remain 4 points back of them, I should say 3 points back from them, once you get to that point, then the season's your hand. So the Rangers have to keep winning. The Flyers really don't have a chance here at this point. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens down the line in the East. The Islanders are going to be absolutely fine. I mean, they might have some small chemistry things going on here, but they don't need to kill themselves right now. So we'll see what happens. But it's going to be a good end of the season. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun finish. Washington pulling away looks like they're going to be the number 1, and then Islanders and Pittsburgh will fight for 2.
Ray, what we said this at the beginning of the season, that at this point, there's 44 games played. There's about 10 to 12 games left, depending on where you are. If you are 10 points out, you have a chance. All right, the Rangers are 10 points out within a 10-point stream. They have a chance. The Flyers are 8 points out, and like you said, Boston has 2 games at hand. They're probably out of it at this point. But like I said, even if you give Boston those 4 extra points, you're still within striking distance, right? So
right.
It's possible. Yeah, keep in mind too, Boston's got to play some of these teams at the bottom too. You can get some help here. The Rangers are alive. They're alive. They're clinging, but they're alive.
Yes.
Flyers, Jersey, and Buffalo.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting finish to the season. Like we just said, and GLZP said, those games, games against the Bruins head-to-head could be huge at the end of the year. Massive. Rangers actually, at this current time, have the tiebreakers over the Bruins. Right. So if by some miracle they end up being tied in points, the Rangers would actually get that would actually go in the Rangers' favor. But it's going to be a lot. We're going to see what happens. It's going to be an interesting finish. But again, I predicted the Rangers will not make the playoffs. I think they'll be right where these teams are right now. Aside from maybe Pittsburgh and the Islanders maybe flip-flopping, I think this is how the Eastern Division is going to wrap up. That's just my prediction. That's my thoughts. We'll see what happens. Obviously, we're following this as it continues to develop here this spring. Yeah, let's see. Also, Casey, as we keep shouting out Casey, poor Casey's tearing up all his T-shirts. Hopefully soon we will have T-shirts that then Casey will be able to tear. Don't tear those up.
Mail, they are very, very hard. And on their way here right now.
Yeah, so hopefully we will have our T-shirts soon, our own Geeks Who Like Sports merchandise. Stay tuned for more news on that. So that's so moving now from, speaking of spring sports, obviously there's no more definitive spring sport than baseball. When you think of spring sports, you typically think of baseball. It starts in April, of course, and it has been an interesting start to the season. Major League Baseball doesn't know. Oh, actually. Actually, there's one story I remember that I want to tie into this because this is interesting. Both baseball and hockey actually had, and this is again a more political thing. I didn't want to say this, but there was responses to what happened in Minnesota last week. The Wild actually postponed their game. A lot of players in baseball chose to sit out. Lee, I just wanted to briefly get your thoughts on the Wild choosing to postpone the game because of yet another, and not to get into politics, yet another shooting in the Minnesota area, and just the situation in general, because baseball also had a lot of guys sit out because of it.
I respect their decision to do that. I mean, sports' job is not to be in the way of real news. What I like is it wasn't politicized, like you said. I mean, most people probably didn't notice that this happened, and that's fine. Like, we've learned a lot over the last year and some change about how to deal with social issues within sports. And like I said, I think that and the NHL and MLB wisely stepped aside and did not make themselves the story, because they're not the story. So, that's the way I look at things.
Peaceful protest.
Like
yeah. It was peaceful protest. So speaking of, so hockey now into baseball, that was supposed to be my transition there. Baseball, one of the other things that baseball has been screwing up lately, and they didn't screw that up, but the things that baseball have been doing that it's just we're so used to baseball screwing things up.
We got another screw up right here.
Yeah, exactly. Is that we're talking about the replay use in baseball. Of course, the Phillies versus
what use? What use? What?
Well, exactly use? And I think that Lee, and I think a lot of Phillies fans who even saw this play admit that, of course, on Sunday Night Baseball last week, that Alec Baum was out at home plate.
There's nothing.
He never touched home plate.
There's nothing to admit. He was out. I'm not gonna lie and say, I'm happy that I'm upset that went our way. Any team would be happy if something went their way, but they didn't touch home plate. They looked at it and still gave him the run. So what are we doing? What's the point of replay? What are we doing here?
Exactly.
Even I, as a Phillies fan, was like, what was that? Stupid. Baseball kills me, man. This is why I'm not watching. This is not why I'm watching. Ray, I will go to a game with you. I'm not kidding. But I just have barely watched any. The sport has completely lost me at this point. I don't understand what they're doing.
It's been baseball with the replay, and the umpires in general are terrible. Yeah. I think their balls and strikes ratio is one of the lowest ratios in years. They're just absolutely missing everything. It is time to replace them with computers. And please, if you're not going to use replay, then why are you slowing the game? Slowing down an already slow game. Like, it is. Right. You guys got to fix this as quickly as possible.
Look, there has been no explanation of how this player. All right, and I watched the replay. Okay, he didn't touch home. There has been no explanation of how that was not overturned. All right. Yeah. And now again,
in baseball, just again, their typical response: sweep it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. Nothing to see here.
Or at least explain it. Like what they should have done at that point was like, okay, he was never tagged out, and the play died, so we just had to award him the run. at least explain that. At least say that. I would have been like, okay, I get it. Like, no, he was never tagged out, and he touched home plate, or he never had touched home plate, so they have to do something. Weird.
The sad thing is that there's an angle where he clearly was tagged.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Like if we can get the angles at home, why can't the umpires at the ballpark get those same angles?
Again,
I don't understand.
The question is this: what is the point of replay? What is the point of replay if you're not going to overturn? And this, as Ray's saying, this wasn't one of those like, oh, it had to. There needs to be clear evidence. Like there was very clear evidence.
Yeah.
So I don't
it's
know.
like football. They say it that sometimes you need to piece it together. One angle shows one part of the story, one angle shows the other, and then you can be like, okay, this happened at the same time as this. The ball's over the line, it's a touchdown, or whatever. Like baseball needs to be able to do the same thing. Yeah. From seeing two different angles, I could see Baum's foot never touched home plate, and Darno's glove touched his arm. Holy cow, he's out. It's that simple. Like it's just that simple. You know what's not simple? As JC291 leads us into our next subject, talking about the Yankees not looking good right now. The Yankees are the worst team in the American League and almost the worst team in baseball. 5-9 now after dropping another one today, 6-3. This is the first time since 1998 the Yankees have been sole possession of the worst record in the American League. Of course, that year the Yankees did end up going on to win the World Series, but I'm going to say right now, this is not a team that's winning the World Series. I'm going to say right now, this is not a team that's making the playoffs. In fact, this team is so disgusting to watch last night that the fans decided to show how disgusting the Yankees are playing last night by somehow, I don't know if this was coordinated, but like 30 fans brought baseballs to the game, and they threw them all on the field at the Tampa Bay players. Now, of course, joining the likes of Philadelphia and New York Giant fans for throwing things onto the field. Good job to the 10,000 Yankee fans who were there in limited attendance yesterday for making yourselves look like a bunch of morons. But I also completely understand the frustration, because if I was face-to-face with Aaron Boone right now, I'd probably punch him in the face. So, that said,
oh, I love watching Yankee fans come down to earth with the rest of us. It makes me so happy. No one feels bad for the Yankees except for Yankee fans who feel bad for themselves. Poor you. The Yankee fans. Look, man, way too early to be mailing it in with your team. This is just pure New York angst, and obviously a team that wins a lot, not knowing how to not win. Way too early. We're not even 20 games into this season, man. What are you doing? All right, way too early. I'm not mailing it in on the Yankees yet. Rough start. You know, I mean, Ray, you know this, man. There's guys who bats, they don't come alive until it gets hot outside. You're way too early. I'm not saying you shouldn't be critical. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should be like, la, 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 la. Yankees started slow. I'm not saying you should do that. You have a right to be critical, but mailing it in, that's the most un-Yankee thing I've ever heard. Come on, man. You guys got to suck it up like the rest of us and deal with it. I'm not.
The problem is,
never going to get sympathy.
This team has a ton of problems.
No Yankee fan will ever get sympathy from me. And yes, it's because I am a fan of the worst team historically in baseball history. So there's no way you're ever going to get through to me on this either.
No, I get it, but look, I'm just going to say the Yankees are playing terribly right now. I think a lot of it starts at the top with Cashman and Boone.
That I completely agree with, but I wouldn't mail it in on the Yankees yet. It's too early, way too early.
Look, I think that I've been very critical of this team for a while, and you know this, and I hate Cashman's moves recently. I think Boone is one of these managers who has his nose in a book too much. I think it also the players every day don't know if they're playing, they don't know what position they're playing. People, never mind baseball players, never mind sports players, people like routine. And when you get to the ballpark and you don't know if you're playing and you don't know what position you're playing, we've played 14 games. I think we've had 13 different lineups already. It's kind of a bit much, and I think that's a lot for a baseball team at this point. And a lot of that comes down to Aaron Boone not knowing what he's doing, caring more about matchups and lineups and all this other garbage instead of just putting out the best guys every day and playing the hot hand. Right. And I mean, to JC's point, was Nick Nelson starting the Friday night game? I have no idea. Nick Nelson isn't a starter. Michael King has a 0 ERA and was a starter in the minor leagues. Came in and pitched 3 scoreless innings of relief. I hate this opener garbage. Don't even get me started on that. But also, by the way, you've got this highly touted rookie called Devi Garcia who's on the taxi squad. How about you call up an actual starter to start the baseball game? Right. Why the hell did you trade Jay Buhner? Come on!
I'm so glad I bought you that.
So
shirt.
yeah, the Yankees are in a lot of trouble.
This
Reese
is what we're
says
gonna
we
do.
can't make fun of Philly fans. We can still make fun of Philly fans, but we are now in the same category as you as well.
This is what
Randall,
we're
our
gonna
buddy
do.
Randall's there. Hello, Randall. As we're looking in chat, I know a Rays fan. JC wants to know. Sorry, I missed it.
Hold up for a second. Here's what we're gonna say. Number one is this: that everything you said that's wrong with the Yankees. The good news is it's very easily fixable. All right, it might require the movement of some management, but it's easily fixable. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm calling out our producer Caitlin, who's listening to this and is editing this. Write a note, Caitlin, for episode 105 that Ray lost his mind on the Yankees. So when we get to episode 115 or 120 and the Yankees are surging into first place, which is probably going to happen because of the Yankees, we will replay this episode, and Ray will have the exact same face that he has now as he eats crow on his own team, thus making me the champion.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to eat crow. That's the thing. I'd be happy to. Oh, JC asks, do I think the Rays are going to be good? No, I don't think the Rays are that good. I think they just have our number. Just like the same way we have Baltimore's number, and there's just certain teams that beat certain teams. I think Toronto and actually I think Boston will both finish better than Tampa Bay. I legit believe that. And hopefully Mike Ford does get called up to play first base soon, JC. So yeah, I hope I'm right. Celebrity guest umpires? No, Randall, that's a terrible idea, buddy.
That's a great question of the week. It's who would your celebrity guest umpire be? So Randall says, it would be fun for baseball? Celebrity guest umpires. Let's get Bruno Mars to call a game. I don't know about Bruno Mars, but I would like to know what everybody in chat thinks and everybody listening on what your celebrity umpire would be.
I don't want any celebrity umpires. I want computers. I want the umpires gone. I'm sick of the human element.
No, I hear you. Also, Matt, with the quote of the week, I watch this show for Ray rants the same way people watch motorsports for the crashes.
There you go. There you go. Oh, goodness. Randall, you might be right. Tampa might make the playoffs. I don't think they will. And that also leads us into one of JC's other questions. My surprise team thus far? How about the Seattle Mariners in first place at 9-5? That's easily the biggest surprise of the season for me. And then probably the San Francisco Giants in second place in the National League West. Didn't see that from me.
It's very early.
Yes, it is very early, but those are definitely big surprises for sure. And yeah, JC, I don't know how Boston sweeps Tampa, then Tampa sweeps us, but Baltimore sweeps Boston, and then we beat Baltimore. Again, sometimes it's just one of those things, especially in a division like the American League East, where one team just beats another. And unfortunately, right now, most teams have the Yankees number, specifically Toronto and Tampa Bay. Kevin Costner. Randall, because, I'll say this, Randall, that's true, because Kevin Costner actually knows baseball. Kevin Costner would be a good celebrity baseball umpire. I like that one, actually. Not Bruno Mars. Kevin Costner. I'm all for that. And Ray Liotta. I want Ray Liotta there calling balls and strikes as well. How about that? Little Field of Dreams reunion.
Only if Joe Pesci's up to bat. A strike? A strike how? What do you mean strike? Like I amuse you? That was a strike. You are a strikeout. Joe Pesci would be amazing from that game. Yeah. Okay. Strike. That's my Joe Pesci. Okay.
So, despite all the bad news in baseball, there actually have been some fun stories this week I really want to bring up. First off, Louis Tiant, who was a pitcher for the Red Sox in the 70s, helped lead them to the American League Championship Series before they lost to the Reds. This is a funny thing. A guy went to that game. All he wanted was Louis Tiant to sign his ticket. He held on that ticket for 46 years. And funny enough, he met Louis Tiant at a vaccine clinic to get his COVID shot. And after holding on to that 1975 ALCS ticket for 46 years, got Louis Tiant to finally sign it. That's the kind of good... Baseball needs more stories like that. That was a good story this week. I thought it was a fun
mildly
story.
obsessive, but okay, I'll let it go. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, if they're Red Sox fans, I mean, they have nothing else to live for. So,
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Wow.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Our final baseball story here is I'm just going to push on through. Alex Rodriguez.
Hey, Rod.
Looking to buy to the Timberwolves in the NBA. You're starting to see this a lot now. Former players, especially the big money players across all the leagues, are buying up ownership in professional sports teams.
Finally making enough
Lee, what are
money
your
to do
thoughts
that.
on A-Rod buying an NBA team?
Yeah, well, to your first point is that players, we're starting to hit the time period now where players are getting paid so much money, and A-Rod obviously fits into that they can't afford to do stuff like this, and they're making smart business decisions after they leave their sport to be able to buy other sports teams. Look, I'll be honest with you. If I was playing for his professional sports team and a former professional athlete was buying the team, I wouldn't be upset about that. They'd have some idea of what's going on. They probably know a little bit more from the player perspective. We're seeing this actually in Brooklyn right now with Nash coaching the Nets. And we'll get into basketball in a few minutes. But look, I think that from a managerial point of view, and again, when you're an owner, you have to make certain decisions that are not, GM or coach decisions. But I don't think having someone who's been there, even in another sport, is a bad thing. But it's amazing to see how the American professional athlete has, garnering enough wealth that they can buy a professional sports team. Like, that's huge. I mean, really, Magic Johnson was the first owner of a team that's really gone to the promised land. I mean, Michael Jordan obviously had, with the Wizards, but Magic Johnson, and all the owners of the Dodgers, it's not a bad thing to me. Not a bad thing to me at all.
No, and Randall brings up a good point. Jeter also partially owns part of the Marlins.
Right.
We are seeing this more. And yeah, and like Caitlin brings up also, obviously the big one that I was thinking of is Mahomes buying part of the Royals. Mahomes. Yeah, you're starting to see that a lot. JC, by the way, I was joking about the Boston thing. So, it's okay.
See,
calm
you're
down.
You're making the Boston people upset, Ray. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, but I don't know. But actually, that kind of gives me a little bit of joy.
JC, we need to come up there. We'll go meet you up at Quincy Market. I'm not going to Dick's Last Resort, but we can get ourselves some good seafood. Ray will be there, very upset, but he'll be there.
Yeah, actually, I haven't been to. I do look forward to PAX East coming back because I used to go to Boston for that every year. I love Boston. I just don't love Bostonites. But yeah.
No, I love your city. I just wish all of you weren't here. Why is it so hard to understand?
Exactly. Like Matt says, it's my pastime is upsetting Bostonians. Exactly. And Matt also brings up another fun umpire would be Steve Buscemi, another celebrity umpire who would be fun. I can agree with that.
Seinfeld would be a great one. Is it a strike or a ball? I don't know. It's a game about nothing.
Was he safe? Was he safe or was he out? I don't know. Go to the replay. Why are we using replay?
Get Kramer. Hit by pitch. Giddy up. Round the bases.
Oh, goodness. Casey says Boston fans are cake eaters. Ooh.
That's a Mighty Ducks reference. Appreciate it.
Yes. And Randall wants to know what we think is the best baseball movie.
Oh, The Natural.
What's the best baseball?
For me, there's a lot, and everybody's got their own preference.
There is a lot. Baseball
down.
is. I mean,
here's one for you, Ray. I wear number 9 in hockey still to this day because of The Natural. Yeah. Because of Roy Hobbs.
Yeah.
The movie, the book has a very different ending for those of you who don't know. One of the very few films. I'm talking all films. This is Geeks Who Like Sports. All films where they changed the ending and the film had a better ending than the book. One of the very few films I can say that about.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of good ones. Casey mentions Angels in the Outfield. I love that one as well. Also, The Sandlot. For me personally,
it's a great one.
The Sandlot is just. I know a lot of people say Field of Dreams, which of course is the go-to. But for me as a kid, and it's one that I still hold very close to my heart, is The Sandlot. I can watch that all the time. Rookie of the Year is another good one.
A good one. Yeah, from Casey. Nobody has anybody not seen The Natural? I mean, come on. I can't believe no one's on board with me with this. That is one of the most iconic films of all time, much as sports film. Come on. Natural.
Yeah.
Roy Hobbs.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of great ones. Caitlin, I didn't even know they made a second Sandlot. Sorry.
They're making a TV show, I thought, too. Aren't they Mighty Ducksing the Mighty Ducksing? Aren't they Mighty Ducksing the Sandlot? I think Sandlot's coming back to Disney or something like that.
I think so. I think you're right. Major League, Bull Durham. Yeah, we could go. There's baseball, and for very good reason, has been romanticized very much over the years. It's very easy to fall in love with it, and we all grew up with some terrific movies.
If you have not seen The Natural, please go see The Natural. That's coming from a non-baseball guy, but this is look, it's a great sports film. Unbelievable. Casey, if you keep putting out movies that are horrible, we're going to come find you. I know where you work. Although Fever Pitch wasn't, I'm not going to lie to you. So real quick side note for these who don't know, Fever Pitch, starring what's his name?
Jimmy Fallon, right?
Jimmy Fallon, I almost said Kimmel. And Drew Barrymore. What's funny about that movie, so that movie was supposed to surround a Boston Red Sox fan in 2004. That's when it takes place. And they had written this whole movie about Boston has always lost up to this point, and the movie was written and filmed during the 2004 season. It was written for them to lose at the end of the season, but him to realize that the girl's the most important thing and not the game. Well, funny thing happened is Boston won the World Series. Ray, I will spare you the details of what happened in 2004, but Boston wins the World Series, so they had to change the whole ending of that movie to match what happened in the actual season. So they did. At the end of the movie, Boston wins and it's really abrupt. They're like, and so Boston won, and I got the girl, and we all lived happily ever after. Jimmy went on to host The Tonight Show, and Drew Barrymore fell off the face of the earth.
She's got her own talk show now, too.
That's even weirder.
It's just, but Caitlin League of Their Own is another great one. This is a good topic. There's a lot of good ones out there for sure. Yeah. And Caitlin said this is just the entire list of movies she's seen at this point. Caitlin,
you haven't seen The Natural, Caitlin. I don't believe you.
She has to watch the Ghostbusters.
She doesn't need to watch Ghostbusters. Everybody, Caitlin Reese has never seen Ghostbusters. You may chat accordingly to that now, both on live or not.
Yeah, Moneyball's another good one, Matt, especially because the Yankees win at the end of that one. But Moneyball's a good one for sure.
You had to give him that little. Little bite there, Matt. Thanks for that.
Yes. So A-Rod buying the Timberwolves, Dwayne Wade moving now into basketball fully, buying a piece of the Utah Jazz. So again, continuing this theme of athletes who have acquired enough wealth to now stay in the sports or just stay in sports in general in a big way. I think this is a fascinating trend that I think is going on right now.
Yeah, it's wealth. It comes down to wealth. And like I said, athletes are making enough money now where they can start to invest in things like a sports team. That's what's happening. It's going to be interesting to see if these... Look, the real game here, Ray, is do these former athletes go corporate or do they actually try and change the game for the better? That's going to be the real change here. You know what I mean? We'll see. I can't see A-Rod being a player's owner, to be honest with you.
No, me either. But I could see Dwayne Wade being a player's owner.
Yes,
right? So I think it's going to...
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how different teams and organizations run. Speaking of the Jazz, unfortunately, yesterday, Donovan Mitchell, one of their superstars, was hurt. He's expected to miss several games. They currently have the best record in the NBA, but this is their first bit of adversity, and I think this is a good chance for Lee to kind of show off his prowess here. Lee, this is the first time the Utah Jazz are really going to face any adversity all year. They've been healthy. They've been really running roughshod off of the league, and now they're one of their superstars, a guy who basically their offense runs through, is going to miss several games. They are in a fight with the Suns for the number one seed in the West. What do you think the Jazz have to do right now in order to maintain that one seed, or do you think it might fall all apart?
What you do is you relax because you're going to make the playoffs. Nobody cares who the number one seed is at the end of the day. They care who wins the NBA Finals with an S, which still makes no sense. But I will say this is an opportunity. It's all about how you face adversity in a season. The opportunity here is you do not have your star, which means everyone's going to have to aggregately figure this out. You might not win every game. Basketball's a game where one player can make a massive difference. But you have to find a way to play better and someone can step up and come through. And you've seen this continuously throughout sports history. All right. The other nice part about it is the Jazz are probably a little bit more of a complete team than some of these super teams if you're looking at the Lakers or really wherever LeBron's playing. Whereas if LeBron's out of the lineup, they're losing, period.
Which is what the Lakers are doing right now. Yeah.
Right. And the other side of that, too, is if LeBron's in the lineup and they're not playing with him the correct way, they're going to lose. So you don't panic. The number one seed is great. It's not everything. Again, Ray, I could go back through history. You might know this, but I'm saying if I went back to like 1997 or 1996 when the Bulls were winning all their championships, who the number one seed was, it was probably the Bulls. But my point is nobody cares. All right. Doesn't matter what the standings are. I have seen 8th eighth seed teams win the championship. I've seen number 1 seeds win the championship, and the number 1 seed typically wins far less than other years. So, yeah, you don't panic. You take it a game at a time, and you do what you got to do. That's it. You don't make it about one player. That's a big mistake if you do that. We can't win without him. Well, you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Jazz respond. Again, they're only expecting him to miss several games. It's a sprained ankle, no structural damage. Yeah. X-rays were negative.
It's an opportunity. However you look at it, it's an opportunity for someone to step up.
For sure. Speaking of guys stepping up, I want to talk about the Knicks real quick. I know you guys are probably sick of hearing me about the Knicks.
The Knickerbockers?
The Knickerbockers. The Knicks are on a 5-game winning streak.
Woo!
They're 3 games over 500. They've now gotten back into the 6th seed. They're only a game back of the 4 seed. Things are very close in the East. But I want to shout out to Julius Randle because, again, this is a guy who was on the scrap heap when he left the Lakers. He's bounced around. Last night, he did something that hasn't been done by a Knicks since 1985. He put up 40 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. Actually, I think it was like 7 assists and like 43 points. But like 40, 10, and 5, the first time since Bernard King in 1985. Wow. Okay, we're going way back in the time machine for that. Yeah. And in terms of a big win, by the way, beating up on the Dallas Mavericks led by former Knick and piece of trash Kristaps Porzingis. And it was a big win for the Knicks in a lot of ways. Again, not only were so many of them, but that bit of history there. And again, this is a Knicks team, we talked about it before, that really has an identity. Yes, not always. Randall's not always going for 40, 10, and 5. He's not always the focal point of the offense. He just happened to be last night. He has been their MVP this year. But this is a team that has an identity. They seem to be clicking at the right time as we're about 15 games left in the season. I don't think the Knicks are going to certainly make a run at the 1 seed 76ers, who we'll talk about in a second. But I think the Knicks could still get that 4 seed. It's super tight right now in the middle of the pack of the East. And again, I think a home court round 1 for the Knicks would be huge in terms of them possibly getting to the second round, where I do admit I think they'll probably get bounced, depending on who they play, because the Nets and the 76ers, and even I would say the Nets and the 76ers are clearly the 2 favorites in the East. The Bucks, I think, still have a few weaknesses that I think the Knicks have even beaten the Bucks a couple times this year. There's some weaknesses that good defensive teams like the Knicks can exploit. But I think the Nets and the 76ers are just too powerful. Lee, what are your thoughts on that little tidbit of Knicks history? And then let's get into your 76ers, who also won last night, ending the Clippers win streak, and also just looking damn dominant right now.
Yeah, what's interesting about the Knicks 5-game run is that it was matched by Boston. Otherwise, you would have jumped over them as well. So, look, here's the deal. I've said this before on the show. I've worked for the New York Knicks before. Really enjoyed their fan base, really enjoyed the organization. And I think a good basketball team in New York City is good for New York City. New York has a lot of great teams, but New York really is a basketball town at heart. I've always believed that. So for the Knicks to be doing really well is great for basketball, number one. It's great for New York City, who needs a pick-me-up. And it's just good to see the Knicks just not taking themselves so seriously. And what I mean by that is just like there was so much pressure to win that they just lost. They kept losing because they're the Knicks. Yeah. Now that's kind of dissipated, and it's like, look, we're the new Knicks, and we're not the 1999 Knicks. We're not basketball's mecca. That's Los Angeles right now, right? Let's just play some basketball, and they're doing it, and they're winning. I could say this about the Eastern Conference: whoever wins the Eastern Conference, whether it be the Nets or the Sixers, barring some sort of cataclysmic, judgment error on them, you're going to see Nash or Doc Rivers win Coach of the Year. Whoever wins this division is winning Coach of the Year, in my opinion. Look, here's the deal with the 76ers. They are in a win the finals or bust type atmosphere right now. The Nets are in a, hey, we're here, we're a super team, we're going to be here for a while. The 76ers, for those of you who don't know, we were told 7 years ago to trust the process. That's where it started. It was a trust the process marketing campaign. Sixers were the worst team in the league when that started. Joel Embiid came to town. We started getting some good draft picks, and they started to turn it around. In the last 3 years, the process, we trusted it, if you will, and it paid off. Yeah. They were a top team. Could never seem to get by Boston. We lost to Toronto in the semifinal, I believe, and Toronto went on to beat, and win for the NBA Finals with an S, because that makes no sense. But the 76ers, this is where they're at. It is a win or bust. Maybe I should say win the Eastern Conference because it's tough anytime you're going up against the Western Conference. But they are primed to win the NBA championship this year. That is their job. That is what they're set to do. The clock has run out. We have really a year or two left to do it. And I think Doc Rivers was the missing piece of that puzzle. Not to mention, I can tell you, Ray, living here, you don't hear too much of the controversy anymore on the news about the team. It just seems like they're all playing well and they're finding ways to win. And again, another team that matched your 5-game winning streak was the Sixers. They've won 4 in a row. And look, it's nice to see, again, when you look at the top 6, all those teams are winning right now. All of those teams are winning.
Yes.
So, like you said, every day, it's funny when I get the alerts, Sixers win, Sixers win, Sixers win. The rare loss does happen, but this is their year. It's got to be. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the playoffs, and, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be an interesting playoff. Again, I think best case scenario, Knicks get to the second round. Again, I think we're still one legit shooter away from getting to that next level, and that's fine.
Barring
this is
a miracle
our process
scenario where you guys are just destined, and that does happen every once in a while. But yeah, I agree. Like
it's
the experience of the playoffs
rare
for the Knicks is really, one game of it would be worth a lot at this point.
Right, exactly. So let's see. We got some questions coming in from chat. JC also predicts. He says Sixers, Lakers in the finals. I think that's a fair prediction.
That'd be a great rematch. 2001.
Yep, totally fair. Let's see. Randall's super excited for Space Jam 2, as are we. We talked about it, I think, last week on the show with the trailer, or 2 weeks ago maybe. Best dunker in basketball right now. I don't know, either Anthony Davis or LeBron. I always go with those big guys. Like, the game is getting away actually from the dunk in a lot of ways, unless it's like a breakaway. Like, it's a lot of
3-point game.
It's a lot more who's the best 3-point shooter
Right.
in the league, right? The league is much more become a perimeter shooting league. It's transformed over the last few years, led by the Golden State Warriors. So I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, even this year, I don't even think they did the dunk competition this year, but they did do the 3-point competition at the All-Star game. So I mean, that says a lot about where the league is going right now.
It's cool to see the game evolve. It really is. What's funny, Ray, is that like you're starting to see these videos of guys hitting 15, 20 threes in a row. It's just like, the game's changed.
Half-court threes. They're regularly taking half-court shots now.
For fun, and they're making them. So it's just the game has changed. Now, doesn't mean there's not a place for a dunk, but the dunk is now much more of a statement play. I mean, it always has been, but it's just much more of a statement play now than it is a
right.
When
you want to posterize somebody or rub it in somebody's face, that's when you dunk. If you want to score points, you're taking the corner 3.
Right. Look. You look at a guy like Curry, which everyone knows. I mean, like you're talking about 15 extra points a night by just shooting threes. That'll win you the game. 5 points could win you the game. So the game has changed.
Yeah. Casey just subscribed. Thank you, Casey. Thank you for the subscription. Much appreciated.
Now, Ray,
here.
Do I get a
channel.
portion of this now that we're live on your channel, or do I just? You know what, Ray? You keep it. It's my gift to you. See, I spun that around real quick.
Caitlin says one time in college for a brain break, her professor sent her to shoot half-court shots for 10 minutes. That's fun. Sometimes, doing that any kind of athletic activity, I think, is good to. They say you should take a 5-10 minute break every hour that you work hard in school and stuff to take your mind off of things. It's actually healthier for you. JC says the Knicks would play the Bucks as of right now. Yes, Bucks in 6. That's a fair prediction. I will say this: I actually would take the upset there. Again, I think the Knicks could actually beat the Bucks. That's the one team in the top 3 that I think we could beat. In a series, especially. I think we'll take a game from the Nets, maybe a game from the 76ers, but in a series, obviously, those two teams are better. So I think that, and let's see. Randall, what NBA player do we want to play horse with?
None of them. I'd lose easily.
None, because they would all beat me.
You should have asked which NBA player would I like to play ice hockey against. The answer is all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I would take on the whole Lakers.
Here, how about I'll play?
I'll take on the whole Lakers team right now. 1-on-5.
Yeah, I want to play LeBron in NBA 2K. That's what I want. That's what I want.
You better be careful on that one. He's Well, okay.
Oh no, I'm sure he's fantastic.
You don't want to,
but I know I'm losing at horse.
You don't want to play.
Right? I know I'm losing at horse. I could probably be competitive within NBA 2K though.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, So that's the thoughts there. Lukey, welcome to the chat. Does not believe the Bucks would lose to the Knicks, and that's fair. Just says nah. It's all good. We appreciate the comment and the banter. Let's see. Randall wants to know who would we think would be on the dream team right now? Well, I mean, LeBron, Steph Curry, Doncic in Dallas, Giannis in the Bucks. Like, I mean, there's so. I mean, Embiid probably would be there. Durant, if he's healthy. Anthony Davis. Like, I mean, we know the dream team is just name the superstars of the league currently. Yeah,
we'll find out next year.
Like, yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. With the Olympics coming back, like it's who are the superstars in the league right now? There's your dream team. JC's focused more on baseball. That's fine. But yeah, so that does it for our basketball segment. We're moving on now to the final sport of the day. Football. Had a little bit of football news this week. Some fun stuff. Some free agency moves. Jadeveon Clowney going to the Browns. They let go of Sheldon Richardson. Clowney, obviously a pass rush specialist, signs a 1-year deal there as the Browns look to try to continue what was a great year for them last year and to try and build on that. Bigger news, though, potentially, is that Julien Edelman has announced his retirement. Lee, a lot of folks, this is a big debate online, and I think that everybody who said, personally, I don't think he is, but I want to get your thoughts first. Do you think Julien Edelman is a Hall of Famer?
Man, he's had some Hall of Fame plays.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
But does he have a Hall of Fame career?
Oh, man, that's tough. If he doesn't play for Tom Brady, it's 100% no. I'd have to take a deeper look into his stats for that one, Ray. I've never actually thought about him as a Hall of Famer. My off
that's
paper,
because he's not.
Off paper, no. Yeah, I was just say like without looking at it, no. But no, he's had some Hall of Fame plays, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer just off a whim like that. No.
Right.
There's
now,
too
a lot
many
of folks
players.
here,
There's too many players that would deserve it over him at this point. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the thing is that you look at even guys who he took over for. Wes Welker had a better career than Julien Edelman in terms of numbers.
It would have to be a really
also,
light Hall of Fame year for him to get in. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. JC mentioned Steve Smith. Like Hines Ward had much better stats than Edelman. No, I completely agree. Like this is not a Edelman is a great player. He is not a Hall of Fame player. And again, I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that, like you said, Lee, he played for Tom Brady.
He played for
we wish him well. He seemed like a really cool dude.
Okay.
I'll play him in horse. I'll play Julien Edelman in horse. See how that goes. But yeah, I think he's a cool dude, but he's not a Hall of Fame player.
Right. One thing we should say about Edelman is that he failed his physical. And what's funny to me about what people said, how can he fail his physical? How he's just what, did he eat too much? Like, no, he failed his physical because he's probably incredibly injured from playing professional football. That when they say a guy fails his physical, it doesn't mean he's 50 pounds overweight. What it means is he physically cannot play. I actually give the guy credit for trying to come back, and I'm sure that we'll find out what's actually wrong. But I got to say this to everyone on here. Fans have little to no idea what most of these guys are playing through pain-wise. It is massive amounts of pain. Pain we, the layman, could not get up from. These guys get up and play a football game with, or a hockey game, baseball game. Well, not baseball. And basketball players are wimps.
Yeah, mostly hockey and football players,
like,
not baseball and basketball.
It's amazing.
Sorry,
it's amazing. So, if he failed his physical, I can't wait to hear what kind of internal injury he probably has.
Yeah. No, for sure. Exactly. It's true. Hockey players and football players will play through tremendous pain.
I watched Zdeno
baseball player
Chara.
Gets a hangnail, he's out for 2 weeks.
I watched Zdeno Chara take a full-on slap shot to the leg today, fall to the ground, get up. Puck was still in our zone. He finished his shift. After the shift ended, he dropped back down to one knee, and it took him maybe 30 seconds to get off the ice. Right? That's the difference. It always has been. And don't get me even started on soccer, where, we didn't put this in the rundown, but last week a major dive deciding a game. I don't know how anyone watches that sport when that happens, because it is a wonderful game, soccer, football, if you're in Europe.
When played properly,
It's just that dive was just disgusting, and it kills me.
Yeah, well, and it happens in the NBA too. There was a terrible dive last night in the NBA where a guy faked getting smacked in the face, and it was like clear. Yeah. Like, I mean, Lee, you and I are closer right now in proximity than this guy was to the guy on the court. Like, we're 2,500 miles away, folks. That's like,
wait a minute, right.
Oh,
got him.
What? Oh, Lee, how could you smack me from Philadelphia? How could you?
Cosmic powers, Ray. Boy, I can't wait to get to the geek section. Is that obvious yet?
Yeah. Yeah, so Randall, it's tough to say. Soccer obviously has Randall asked the question, is rugby or soccer better?
Rugby's better. Done.
Rugby's better, but obviously soccer has a bigger worldwide
Don't care.
appeal.
Rugby's better. Done.
Yeah. Cool. He wants to know, Randall also wants to know if his Bucks go to the Super Bowl again next year. I'm going to say no, just because of the odds and not that they have targets on their back. But they are the team to beat. We'll see what happens.
I'm done. I'm done going against Tom Brady until they're not there. Yes, they're the favorite. Randall, I got a question for you. You've asked at least 10 questions today on this live feed, which is awesome. Where the hell are you when we ask the question of the week every week? Where are you?
Yeah,
you need to be answering these things, man. This is built for you. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. He also asked, and actually Caitlin stole my answer. So I was going to say this when I saw it pop up in chat. What NFL player should retire right now? Daniel Dumpster Fire, Danny Jones. I can't stand him. I hope he never plays another game for the Giants. I hope they draft a quarterback, but that's not going to happen. They're going to give him at least one more year until they admit that this experiment failed. And Matt also agrees rugby is much better. So that does it. One other fun thing as we transition into the geekdom. This actually transition us. It was announced this week that Kevin James is set to star in a film as Saints coach Sean Peyton, and it's based on the year that Peyton was suspended for the bounty scandal. He went and coached his 6th grade son's football team, and so it's the idea of Kevin James, this professional football coach, having to coach a bunch of 12-year-olds. I think that could actually be fun. Lee, what are your thoughts?
I'm interested to see if this is set as a comedy or like a drama comedy. Because like the tone of the film is really going to make the matter for me. Now, I have a feeling it's going to be more of a drama comedy, like a feel-good story. It's going to be really awkward when the film starts out with, Coach Peyton, you paid your players to decapitate other people and have them injured, so go coach children. That's going to be a fun little shift there. I don't know what the investigation. For those of you who don't know, the reason why he wasn't able to coach that year is because his team was accused and found guilty of paying their players to injure other players. I still to this date do not know how involved Sean Payton was in that directly, if it was his coordinators or him. But obviously they told him he had to sit out a year. It's funny because the other year that would have been great for this is the year they won the Super Bowl. But I have a feeling it's going to be funny but true, like a Disney-fied kind of like the Rookie type movie.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to see
Kevin
James is so fun.
Story,
yeah.
kind of.
I like Kevin James. So
yeah, and Kevin James is fun, physical comedy. I'm sure it'll be good. Casey hates the idea. Matt loves it. Randall wants a Little Giants remake. So there you go. That's the thoughts from chat. As we now move on into our geek section now. We're talking about a movie there.
Who likes sports?
Yes.
Let me go to geek mode.
Yeah.
Ray, I accidentally put on my prescription lenses, and now I can't see anything because I have my contacts in. So I'm going to take these off, pick up the right pair, and there we go. Whoa, I'm in geek mode. Wow, this world is awesome, man.
There we go. He's in geek mode now.
Yo, in the geek world, we have powers, Ray. This is awesome.
Oh, goodness. Speaking of powers, who we found out has a lot of power this week is John Walker. And kicking off Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Spoilers for everybody who hasn't seen it yet. We're about 36 hours after the premiere. If you haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 5, be warned, the spoilers are now incoming. The episode starts off with an amazing fight scene between Bucky, Sam, and John Walker. They bring John Walker in. They reclaim the shield, which we know from about episode 2, episode 3 has really been a key underlying motive for these guys after dealing with Walker. Walker, as I predicted last week, gets kind of court-martialed, is stripped of his rank, And then we get what I found out, actually, this is actually talking about, this was a surprise reveal, but this character, funny enough, was supposed to make an appearance in Black Widow. So I'm curious to know if she does still, and this is a big deal. But as I freaked out, and if you haven't seen it on our StreamLounge.io live streams every Friday, you can go back and watch the replay. I'm not going to recreate it here, but I absolutely freaked out live. I freaked out again yesterday. Madam Hydra is been introduced. Now, she's not necessarily Madam Hydra. They used her real name, but we're all assuming it's Madam Hydra. That is the big deal. Lee, first off, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, amazing casting. Had a short scene with Walker, said that she's going to reach out to him. So many possible implications here. Are they going to do Thunderbolts? Are they going to do Hydra Cap? What are they going to do? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are from actually going back to what you said before this started. I'm now kind of excited to see Black Widow, because we knew they had to have something in there that was going to connect to this universe. We just knew it, right? And I would have loved to have been in the PR marketing room at Disney when they're like, well, can we reverse it? Can we do one without the other? Well, what's going to happen? Because, again, your reaction last night probably would have been matched by a lot of people if Black Widow had been out already. But, look, I don't know where it's going to go. I just like the idea that we know this, that John Walker's not just disappearing after Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We know that Julia Louis-Dreyfus is not coming in for a one-episode cameo, right? This is a very, very well-respected actress that is in it for the long haul. And I think you're starting to see Phase 4 elements come to life. Now, what we talked about on the stream yesterday, Ray, which we don't know, is that the potential for a second season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or whatever it's called, is growing. Right, because there's no films that are announced that are going to continue this, right? So I could see a second season now of this, and that they might be creating an MCU for streaming, meaning that a secondary thing. And in fact, Ray and I talked about this a couple weeks ago too, of like if this trend continues, Ray, the movies might be the minority aspect of what we see. That they're just the big event between shows. Right now, the shows are big events between movies, so. It's going to be really crazy to see what happens. But yeah, look, Madam Hydra manipulating who will become U.S. agent. I like that. I don't know where it's going to go.
The big, if you haven't seen it again, the end credit scene is that basically Walker starts making his own shield. Very much hinting at that he's going to be U.S. agent. The question is this episode is about a lot of people, a lot of loose ends being tied up, a lot of character development here, a lot of characters kind of being brought in, kind of having their arcs fulfilled, right? Bucky kind of makes peace with his Winter Soldier self and his Bucky self and his modern self, really, when he turns Zemo over to the Wakandans, right? You have you have Sam coming to grips with the fact that yes, he is going to be the new Captain America. A black man's going to be Captain America. He even goes and sees Isaiah Bradley, who says the exact opposite, that they'll never accept a black African American, a black Captain America, and that they'll never accept it because he has been so poorly. He was so badly treated for his whole life, and you get his full backstory for Isaiah Bradley, which is a huge and powerful scene.
Massive.
And yes, you get John Walker. You get him dealing with the grief still of not being able to have saved Lamar and trying to marry that together. And in case he mentions it, you feel he's wrong, but you still feel bad for him because, again, he's a human, and he even says it in the tribunal, I am what you made me. I am a perfect soldier. I was sent to do a job, and I did it the best way I knew how. And he was punished for it. And it's you have these really interesting dichotomies as you're seeing these characters develop this episode. Of course, setting everything up for episode 6, which looks like, and even Carly, who of course plays the head flag smasher, she kind of becomes more radicalized. You can see her being pushed further along, which Zemo warned about. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of character development here, a lot of interesting things in that regard. And again, John Walker may be U.S. agent in episode 6, but does he still does Madam Hydra still end up recruiting him? Or we saw big thing, Zemo gets taken to the raft in this episode, right? He doesn't get killed, he gets taken to a prison, which of course everyone knows the Thunderbolts, a lot happens there on the raft. Zemo is one of the heads. Could they be setting up a Thunderbolts spin-off show? There's a lot possibly going on here. We're gonna see what happens. Before we make our episode 6 predictions, Lee, what are your thoughts on the character arcs kind of coming to a close here?
Yeah, I got a few things to say about that. So one on your last point is that if there is a second season, that's where the Thunderbolts might come around. That's where they might be going with some of these. From a broader Marvel sense, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that I feel like a lot of Marvel fans are kind of giddy, like, of where are we going? Where are we going with all this? And it made me think about it. We didn't know about Thanos until the Avengers movie. There were 2 Iron Men, a Thor, and a Captain America film before we had any idea where they were going with Thanos. You know what I mean? In fact, it might be hard for people to remember this, but all we knew about the first Avengers movie, that Loki was the bad guy. Loki is the big bad guy, right? There was a time people forget that that's what we thought was the end game, was Loki. And that was just scratching the surface. So I think it's important that we know, as moving into phase 4, it's okay that we don't really know where they're going. The important thing is they know where they're going. And you guess if they haven't earned your trust yet, I don't know what's going to, unlike DC. The next thing I was going to say is this. There were 2 important arcs here that I wanted to tap on. One is John Walker. And we talked about this in every episode, the strife of the military person, right? And the strife of someone with PTSD, clear PTSD, that these guys go and fight. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but nobody really thinks about what these soldiers are going through and what's asked of them, right? And that there's a clear lack of respect. Now, we all agree that the scene in his tribunal were a little too harsh, right? And, Marvel might have a way of, like, maybe Madam Hydra was more involved in that than we realize. But I think there's a larger statement there of soldiers coming back from war and being completely and utterly ignored or pushed aside or not respected. And again, to the credit of most U.S. soldiers, when they do come back, they will tell you that I'm not fighting for recognition. I'm fighting so you don't have to worry about it. And that is one of the reasons I love the U.S. military so much, among others. But when you look at John Walker, and we talked about this, again, what he did was bad, but I don't know if he necessarily did anything wrong, okay? You can argue with me whether he committed murder or not, but he killed a terrorist by the eyes of America or by the eyes of the GRC. He did his job, who just killed his friend that, like was involved in a murder. So, like I said, I understand the optics of Captain America killing someone and then wanting to take the shield away, and we Ray predicted
especially
that.
someone who
Right.
was clearly surrendering, right? An unarmed, someone who was an unarmed combatant was clearly surrendering.
It's nice to live in comic book world with that one, because in the real world it wouldn't have played out that way at all. But the idea is that some people are making a good point that the watchers of this show like Zemo more than they like John Walker. Zemo is a bad guy. He's a really bad guy. He committed a cold blood murder in this show, right? And nobody said anything about that, right? So I think there's a lot of echoes here with that. Now, the other side of this show I want to talk about really this week, we talked about this on the stream last night a little bit too, is Isaiah. And the incredible writing from the Marvel staff. Unbelievable writing to bring an incredibly loud, in-your-face social issue to the show and do it so elegantly that almost everyone can learn something and agree. And that is obviously the plight of there being a black superhero, the black Captain America, and privilege and all of those different conversations that are going right now in America and around the world. They were able to bring it to the comic book level. And again, something comic books have always been able to do is transcend these topics and make it in a way that you can have a good conversation. But I applaud Marvel for not just scraping over the idea of there being a black Captain America because Steve Rogers said so. That's one of the things they're doing here. And there was a line last night where Bucky says, look, Steve and I didn't think about the repercussions of making a black Captain America. That wasn't our intention. Right, that's privilege, and that I thought that was. And he said, "I'm sorry." That was a great scene for lots of different reasons, right? So I'm not going to get into the social side of this, right? If you want to have a discussion with me about that, feel free to contact me or email me at lee@geekswholikesports. But I really appreciate where they're going. I also, Ray, one thing we didn't talk about the stream is the impact of Bucky going to the Wakandans to make the new suit for Sam.
Yes.
Right? Of course it makes sense that the suit for this Captain America would come from Wakanda and that Bucky was aware enough to have them created outside the obvious advantage that might give Sam. There's some symbolism there as well. And that was kind of completing the arc of T'Challa, which is what happens at the end of Black Panther. We need to be there for our people. So I just there's a lot more going on in this, and I think as we move on with it, it'll be uncovered. But just an incredible episode. I saw some people give that a lower rating, like saying, "I was just setting up the last episode." Man, I think some people missed the point. This episode was really good. In fact, Ray and I gave it like a 9.5. Seeing a lot of people giving it.
I agree. I think this is the best episode of the series.
Right.
Like
it might be better than the next one.
You have good action.
Right.
You have good action. It sets a lot of stuff up. You obviously have the surprise reveal. Like, I mean, there's so many good things here. Fishy says, "We're looking good. What's up, buddy? How's it going?" Yeah, there's so much going on here. I also want to just quickly get to some of the comments in chat before we go to our episode 6 predictions. Randall and Casey confirmed this as well. I don't think the U.S. government doesn't know that Walker took the super soldier serum, but Hydra knows, which I think to me opens up the possibility in the future for maybe, if not him becoming Hydra Cap, maybe they clone him. Maybe they... maybe that leads to somebody like Nuke, right? And other villains who have had the diluted version of the super soldier serum that doesn't work as well. There's a lot. And yeah, of course, Casey, we mentioned it yesterday. Sam, the ghost of Steve, kind of always over his shoulder, where he purposely runs on the right side or his right of the camera, and for somebody to pass him on the left, because obviously that would be Cap. He always is paying homage to Steve. Steve is always there. And it's a very good point, Casey, that Bradley and Walker, in a way, they were both kind of persecuted as soldiers for doing jobs that they were told to do. And I don't think that there's enough, right? That it's you're great until it becomes inconvenient a lot of times in the public eye.
We should also mention that Walker is able to walk away, where Isaiah was put in prison for 30 years. That was also a pretty clear message that, this Cap got to walk away, basically unscathed outside his record. And Isaiah was in prison for 30 years. So they're really showing the two extremes of Captain America here.
Yeah, no, it is definitely an interesting dynamic there. So that leads us into episode 6. There's a lot of other things that were set up here. To me, it's clear that Joaquin Torres is going to be the new Falcon. Sam has his wings broken at the beginning of the episode. Joaquin takes them away, presumably to fix them. Sharon, to me, is clearly the power broker. She springs Batroc the Leaper from prison. He makes an appearance at the end of the episode. So, he's going to probably be in the final fight, fighting alongside the Flag Smashers. I think, and obviously we're going to get the big reveal of Sam in next episode. I think you're going to see Sam, Bucky, U.S. Agent for better or worse, and then a surprise, Joaquin as Falcon, and then a surprise appearance, probably by somebody like War Machine against the Flag Smashers, Batroc the Leaper, and that's probably what you're going to see there with Sam and Carly there as the final confrontation. I think that's what episode 6 is setting up. Lee, what are your predictions for the final episode?
Well, when I look at a final episode of a show, I look at the questions that I feel like I need answered, and I might not get all the answers. Obviously, the big one is seeing Sam as Captain America. I believe that will be answered. The reveal of the Power Broker, I believe that will be unveiled. Or, again, we've said this before, the only other thing that Sharon Carter might be as a second in command. I don't know why they would do this, but they possibly could. I do think there is going to be some large cameo. The more I think about it, but it can't take away from Sam and Bucky. Like, the show's about them, but I would not be surprised if there was a higher Avenger that shows up towards the end. But I don't want to make the same mistake I made with WandaVision. So I'll be fine if there's not. I just have a feeling there will be. The other question, I don't need it answered, but I just kind of want to know what direction Walker's going to be going in. Because, again, we've said this before, U.S. Agent, who he's becoming, is not necessarily a bad guy, right? And again, Walker's not a bad guy. He's not the bad guy. And I kind of would like to see Marvel mess with people and reverse that back. He's kind of a Venom, right, from Spider-Man. He doesn't not a bad guy. Venom's not a bad guy. Hero. Yeah, he's not a bad. He just hates Spider-Man, and he'll kill people to get what he wants.
Yeah,
but
exactly. That's the thing. He'll do whatever it takes to complete his mission, or whatever it is.
Here's another thought, Ray. Like, we look at character development. Where does Bucky have to do this episode? Right, Bucky's kind of had his redemption now, right? So where does Bucky go from here? Like, that's another thing. This is gonna be a heavy Sam episode. I believe that.
Yes.
I do think Winter Soldier will be there, or I should say Bucky. but like he doesn't need to be. Like his story arc in this story is done. So that if he's there, it's going to be creating a new story for him. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Sam is going to be the focal point. I think a few folks have talking about the wings in chat. Matt asks if the wings will be incorporated to Sam's suit. Randall believes they will. I don't. No, I don't think they're going. Joaquin, I think they're going to. I think they're going to completely pass it to Joaquin. I think they're going to completely separate Sam from the Falcon persona and make him just the true Captain America at this point.
You might not see the wings in this episode. You might not see Joaquin as Falcon. All right, that might be the next season.
Or it could be a post-credit scene. Like we don't know. Like again, my prediction is you're going to have this like a mini Avengers assemble kind of thing with like War Machine and Falcon and all that stuff. It might just be Sam and Bucky. Again, the show's called Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It might just be the two of them there. We don't know. Casey, I do not think that Bucky's going to get a White Wolf suit. That would be cool, but I don't think they're going to do that, especially after the way the relationship with the Wakandans ended, where they basically said, we're still good, but stay clear of Wakanda for a while. Like, let things cool down. So I think I think Casey there will he will still be in his leather jacket, rip the sleeve off. I think it'll be that Bucky. And I think Randall again. I think it's gonna be Sam and Bucky primarily. You might see other characters. I hope to see other characters, but you're gonna see Sam and Bucky fighting the Flag Smashers. That's gonna be the bulk, the center of this episode. And Batroc the Leaper will be there too.
The other thing too, Ray, is that look, they kind of allude to the fact that Carly's created an army so large that it can't be overcome, and that was the scene in New York where she kind of swipes on her phone and there's just 50 people nearby.
Can't kill an idea.
Right. So, the other fight is going to be there's not enough Avengers to fight the half the population of the planet. So does Captain America need to inspire people, which has kind of been an undertone of this entire series. Is Carly going to do something stupid? And then Sam will have to, as Captain America, reunify everybody because the world needs Captain America. Like that's the big tone of the show that we haven't really talked about. Is can Captain America bring people back together? And I think one of the things that Isaiah, his role in this last episode was, he said, damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of to him, you shouldn't do this. So can Sam inspire him? So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And there will be conflict and there will be a solution and there will be a big question mark at the end. I mean, that's every Marvel movie. But it's fun to see where this has gone. But look, be prepared. You might not see Lady Hydra, Madam Hydra. You might not see John Walker. You might not see Bucky. I doubt that. But you might not get all this stuff. You know what I mean? You're definitely going to get Carly. You're definitely going to get Sam. And that's what we know, That would be really weird if Sam didn't show up in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it's pretty safe there. Randall says they're going to reveal the power broker again. For sure. I think it's going to be Sharon. I don't know how it's not Sharon. The only other way it's not is if it's Madam Hydra is also the power broker and Sharon's working for her, but I think they're going to have Sharon just legit be the power broker. And Casey mentions a pretty good point. I think we mentioned this yesterday that Hydra may absorb some of the Flag Smashers. I think you may see the Flag Smashers, the ones who stay radicalized, you might see them become the new Hydra. You might see them become the new Hydra army. You might see Carly. Could you imagine if they make Carly Hydra Cap? Like, I could see something like that. Like, I could even see that. Like, you could see that character evolve, Like, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this last episode. There's obviously a lot of questions, but I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be really well done. I think it's going to be really well done. Randall says there's a rumor that the power broker is actually Justin Hammer to set up Armor Wars. That, I think, is a bit of a long shot. You also mentioned Secret Invasion earlier. I think there's more chance that we get something from Secret Invasion but I really do think this is going to be a much cleaner conclusion than what we had with like WandaVision.
Right.
I don't think you're going to get as much of this big setup for a lot of stuff going in the future from this, aside from maybe the Hydra becoming reformed and rebolstered. I think that's
you have to use WandaVision as an example. We all got our hopes up way too much, and that last episode of that wasn't as bad as people probably think it was. So, it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Expect that. We are far too spoiled now with Marvel to always expect a massive twist at the end. I'm going to say this again, that unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, The Mandalorian rose the stakes so high with bringing Luke Skywalker back. And Ray and I discussed this on the show before. Like everybody wants a Luke Skywalker moment. There is nothing bigger than the Luke Skywalker moment. Like we said this. It's got to be top 5 all-time television moments. You're just not going to get that every show. So just smile and be happy. That's what Disney does.
Yeah. Randall says he wants a trailer for Shang-Chi. I'm sure we'll get that in July in front of Black Widow. Yes. I think that's when you'll get your Shang-Chi trailer. And Casey says it doesn't think huge cameos are necessary. I agree. I think we got our big cameo. We got our huge cameo already in Julia Louis-Dreyfus. What more do you want?
I want Magneto, right? I'm just kidding.
Speaking of spoiled fans, and I'm joking. People want Black Panther be recast. They want to see T'Challa recast. Randall actually brought this up in
Randall,
chat.
You need to tell us why in chat right now. We'll read it on the air here, but tell us why you want him recast, because I don't agree with this whatsoever.
I don't agree with this whatsoever either. I'm perfectly fine with them passing it along to Shuri. It's what happened in the comics. I think that it's also the fact it's pays more honor to Chadwick Boseman to just let the character be retired than to have it be recast. If anything, it's a slap in the face to Boseman, saying he was replaceable, and I think that, to me, he is irreplaceable.
Yes,
I remember I was I was actually Twitch streaming live when I found out he passed, and I nearly couldn't finish the stream. I had to take a commercial break. It made me that sick to hear that heartbroken. It just
I
think to me it would make me mad. It would make me madder if they recast him, because I think this is a terrible idea, and I think this again stems from the fact, especially from too many comic book fans now think that they control the studios and they control everything because they got that stupid Snyder Cut remade, which to me is still a disaster. We're going to talk about that later too. But this is an awful idea. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
You know, I like to look at precedents. I like to look at this almost from a legal point of view. Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. The suit and him are one of the same. You want his property, but you can't have it. That's a quote from Iron Man 2, for those of you who don't know. This is the deal. Chadwick Boseman is Black Panther, period. All right? The mantle of Black Panther can be moved on. Just like the mantle of Iron Man, but you can't recast this. You're going to get Ironheart soon, okay? So we know they're bringing more Iron Men, women, people, all right? Yeah. But T'Challa is not replaceable, right? And I don't know why you'd want to do that. And again, the canon lends itself to letting Shuri do it. Now, what I don't know is how they're going to explain it. But it's amazing to me that, and this is what kills me about fandom sometimes, is when he died, this was unthinkable that they could recast him. In fact, there was talk about should they bring back Killmonger, which I was like, he's dead. Yeah, no. Should they bring back Killmonger? Shuri, it makes sense. It makes sense. But Randall, you need to defend yourself. I'm not hearing anything from you right now about why they should recast Chadwick Boseman. I need a good reason to do it, and I don't have any reason. They will find a way to wrap up T'Challa's storyline and give it to Shuri, even if it's an off-screen death. And the audience should understand that. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why this is trending, and I do agree with Ray that, like we talked about this before with the Snyder Cut, the $30 million ad for HBO Max. It doesn't mean that everything's got to listen to you. Marvel doesn't have to listen to any of us. They know what they're doing. DC needed to listen, right? And they did.
DC still needs to listen.
Made a lot of money off of it. All right, Randall says recasting keeps the character to live on.
Randall, your big thing is saying recasting keeps the character to live on, but the thing is characters die off all the time. I think retiring the character for 25 years or letting it whatever or 10 years or whatever it is. Because we're going to get into it later. They're bringing back Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, but they're doing it. That obviously, first off, Molina's still alive. Secondly, they have a way to do that. But you can let the character you can retire the character because the Black Panther will live on with Shuri. I think
Randall,
that it
should they have recast Princess Leia after she died? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We can disagree.
Taste.
We can disagree. Now Randall is making a point that just writing them off is poor taste, but I mean, I don't know what other choice they exactly have here. All right. Now, keeping in mind too, if when Princess Leia died, they said, "Oh, she will not appear in the final Star Wars film," and she did, right? So a lot can change before Black Panther 2 comes out, and you got to let the dust settle, and they got to talk to Bozeman's family and see if they're okay if they want to make a virtual version of him or whatever. But no, I think recasting is the wrong decision to make. That's just my opinion. We don't have to agree on this, but that's where I'm at.
You could even have whoever the big bad of Black Panther 2 is. You could have somebody in the Black Panther suit pass away in that battle, and then you know what you do? You instantly make the bad guy of the second movie instantly the most hated man in Marvel, and instantly give him super credence as a bad guy, and then you have your reason as to why Shuri has to take the mantle on. You don't have to see Bozeman's face. You don't have to digitally recreate him. But then in that way, you have that's a possibility of how you kill off T'Challa, the character in the universe as well. Just want to put that out there. Again, so yeah, I look, Randall. It's fine that you signed that petition. You're sharing that petition. That's your prerogative. But me and Lee completely disagree with it, and I think it's in very poor taste, personally. Speaking of poor taste, let's talk about Comic-Con. San Diego Comic-Con came to its senses this week and announced they will not do a convention over Thanksgiving weekend. They will go back and wait till July 2022 at the San Diego Convention Center. Lee mentioned this. He predicted it. Thank God he was right. Everybody hated the idea of Comic-Con over Thanksgiving. It was a disaster of an idea. Huge blowback from everyone in the industry. Comics, movies, television, video games, everybody around, that it was a terrible idea. And understandably, the reason why they did it is because it was the only weekend available. But they are losing money. They are desperately losing money there, the folks who run Comic-Con. But they're going to have to survive another year. And I'm going to say this. Also, if San Diego Comic-Con were to go away, as somebody who's been to a half dozen of them, I would not mind if it went away and it went somewhere else. Because the San Diego Convention Center for a very long time has not been able to handle Comic-Con. It's spilled out basically all across San Diego at this point, to the point where it's a disaster. It should go to Vegas, LA. It should go to a city that can handle it. It should get out of San Diego, which I'm sorry, I know everything's leaving San Diego now from the Chargers and the Clippers, but maybe San Diego will learn to take care of people better, and maybe people will want to stay down there. That's my thoughts. I think this is a good thing that they cancel it. They listen to the fan base. They listen to everybody. And they also probably realized that nobody was going to spend any money on that weekend. Lee, what are your thoughts on being right once again that Comic-Con moved away from Thanksgiving?
No thoughts on it. Just I'm glad they made the right decision. That's all I'll say. Think before you look before you leap.
Yeah, have some common sense. Speaking of comics, something we talked about here a couple months in the show that has now come to a conclusion. This is a fun one from Marvel. New X-Men team is being made, and I was so close. I'm so mad. Randall, nobody wants to go to Tampa Bay. I'm sorry, buddy. Randall says bring Comic-Con to Tampa.
I mean, I would go to Tampa Bay to relax right now, but that's different.
Just to relax, maybe, sure, but I mean, they can't even get people to go to Tropicana Field to watch the Rays play. You're the defending American League champion.
If I'm going to Tampa, it's not to go to Comic-Con or go to a sporting event. I'm going to sit on the Gulf side of the beach and be left alone.
Yeah, exactly. And like Casey said, they should have tried to use this time to bolster and create a better virtual experience instead of trying to force an in-person one.
You mean evolve?
Yeah, bingo. Good word there, buddy. Speaking of evolving, the X-Men, next stage in humanity's evolution, supposedly. Again, new X-Men team is coming in the comics. They want to, and there was a fan vote as to who could be potentially added to this team. Randall, St. Petersburg, Tampa, doesn't matter. The 10 people who were possibly up for Strong Guy, Cannonball, Marrow, Boom Boom, Armor, Tempo, Forge, Sunspot, Banshee, and Polaris. Those were the 10 possible X-Men that were going to be added. The vote is finalized, and Magneto's daughter, Polaris, is going to be the new member of the new X-Men team. She barely beat out Banshee, who was my vote, because obviously I scream like Banshee. I am as loud as Banshee. I relate to Banshee. But he was narrowly beat out. Sunspot in third. Yeah. And poor Strong Guy was dead last. But Polaris, I mean, one of the most powerful mutants in the X-Men universe, is now going to be more heavily featured in the new monthly X-Men comic featuring this team. Lee, what are your thoughts on this? I believe you wanted Sunspot, if I remember correctly.
No, I wanted Strong Guy. Strong Guy was my favorite, but
we both were big on Strong Guy. Yeah, and unfortunately he got.
That's also
last.
just because of like when we grew up and stuff. I got no problem with Polaris. Polaris is a good choice. The Magneto family is well known. It'd be interesting to see how she deals with her siblings.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. This was a fun thing that Marvel did to talk about listening to your fan base, and Polaris narrowly edges out Banshee. And speaking of the X-Men, this was a big deal this week. Supposedly, plans for Wolverine were leaked coming out of Marvel that they want to do kind of similar to what is an American Horror Story where it resets every season. That basically it'd be the different personalities of Wolverine as an anthology series. So one season might be him as Patch down in Madripoor. One season would be him part of Alpha Flight up in Canada. One season would be him as part of the X-Men. One part would be him in Japan. And that this might be a way for them to introduce Wolverine on Disney Plus as a television show before they properly bring back and have him be like experimented on before they properly fully bring mutants into the Marvel Universe. Lee, what do you think about this idea, and what do you think of the validity of this rumor is?
Well, we've been wondering for a while about how they're going to incorporate the X-Men into the MCU, right? Mm-hmm. So it would make sense for Wolverine to be that entry point in the sense of, you could tell his entire history and where he was during all of this leading into something in the MCU, right? So, Wolverine's been around. That's the point. He's been around for everything that's happening, and it'd be kind of weird if they didn't do it that way. So why not do an anthology series of where he was within the MCU and why he hasn't appeared, and then show that once the X-Men appear that he's there? Because, again, look, with mutants is going to be a really weird thing for the MCU. Either they've been around or they haven't, right? Now, if you're talking about the creation of mutants, that could be really weird. If you put a BFG at my head right now. My best guess is that the multiverse of madness, Spider-Man. My guess is that those films are going to start to explain where mutants have been and why we haven't seen them, and then a Wolverine show would totally walk us into that. So here's the other thing too: it would be a lot less jarring to accept the new Wolverine from Hugh Jackman in a television way with an introduction where you really get to know the character. Than just here's the new Wolvie, here he is. That's irresponsible. Yeah. So I'm actually all for it, but I don't know how real the rumors are.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure what the validity of the rumor is, but I do think it's an interesting idea because very few people have had as many faces in the comic universe as Wolverine. Randall mentions he'd love to see an Alpha Flight movie. I think that there's a lot of interesting characters in Alpha Flight. I don't know if we'll get a full movie. That might lend itself better to a TV show as well. Than a 2-hour film, but we'll see what happens. Oh, Lee says he loves Wolverine. He just subscribed in chat. Thank you, Lee, for the subscription.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Really great follower there. I've heard he's listened to every episode of this show.
Yes, been part of every episode. Randall also wants our thoughts on the Batman Fortnite comic. I think it's a cheap tie-in, Randall. I think it's a desperation play by DC. I think it's desperately trying to get young kids to read comic books, and honestly, it just feels like another desperate move by DC because they don't know what they're doing anymore. Simple as that.
I mean, I equate it with when I see Batman Forever mugs at McDonald's. So, is comfortable. I'm actually trying not to I'm not trying to be funny. Like, if you're comfortable with stuff like that, that's what it is. It's an advertisement. That's how you have to look at it. Drink your Ovaltine.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
No denying.
And Randall
does bring up
I would love to see the brown and yellow or blue and yellow Wolverine costume at some point. We would all love this. That's really what we've all been dying for over the years. It just
it does exist.
See what happens. And yes, Matt says it's synergy. So yeah. So moving on now. We did mention that characters do come back and die and whatnot, and it's been confirmed now by Alfred Molina himself that he will be in No Way Home playing Doc Ock. And the thing is that remember, the last time we saw him is he was holding that black hole generator device and he was trying to destroy New York with as he sunk to the bottom of the ocean in Spider-Man 2. Could that have pulled him into a new dimension? Could that have saved his life? There's a lot of ways they could use that to bring him back. I am super curious. I'm excited because, again, I think Alfred Molina obviously was the greatest representation of Doc Ock we've ever had
He's
outside
top
of maybe the
5
cartoon
villains
in the
all
90s.
time, if you really want to go there. He's top 5 comic book movie villains all time. I put him up there.
Exactly. He did a fantastic job with it. And the fact that he has confirmed what has been a long-standing rumor and that we're basically going to get multiverses now somehow, or at least characters pulled in from multiverses in No Way Home. I can't, for the first time in a while, I cannot wait for December to get here because I think this is going to be an absolutely epic movie. And the fact that Alfred Molina came out and said this, and now he rivals Tom Holland in terms of leaking things about the next Spider-Man movie. So I don't know if that's gonna warm himself up to Marvel about doing this character again, but I'm super pumped for this. Super pumped.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Marvel goes. You know, it's funny. I remember when DC blitzed Marvel on the multiverse stuff when they said, "Oh, we're going to do all these Batman and the multiverse and everything's going to be awesome." And then, they knew Marvel was doing something. So Ray and I said months ago that we didn't believe Tom Holland when he said that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire weren't going to be in this. They're totally going to be in this, and I'm looking forward to where it's going to go. I just wish, like you said, Ray, I wish people would shut up about it and just let it happen. Yeah. Because one of the things about this FOMO stuff is starting to bug me. It's like, man, it's just, I don't need to know all this stuff. It's just like, let the movie come out, right? Let it come out with all its glory and enjoy it. Because what's happening, look what we did to WandaVision. Look what they did to WandaVision. They ruined it, their own show. Yeah. By too many rumors.
Right.
Partially
it's on the cast.
Yeah, it's partially on us too.
It's partially on us, but it's also on the cast and the crew.
Yeah, just shut up and make great movies.
Yeah. Yeah, we're 7 months away, right, from Spider-Man. 8 months away. Like we can make it that long. I hope. Yeah, I mean, Randall does also bring up a good point. There's the crisis on the CW where movie Flash. It's the only time that Ezra Miller has ever been good as the Flash, in my opinion, was when he came on the Flash TV show. I think the television Flash is much better than Ezra Miller.
I do too.
Randall, no one wants the Snyderverse. Please just let it die. Please stop saying restore the Snyderverse.
Well,
let it die.
Nobody here wants the Snyderverse. And Randall, the reason we don't want the Snyderverse is that, honestly, I don't need Nightmare. There's been too much leaked about it already. We already know where the story was going. They gave us all the Snyder Cut. Be thankful for that. I don't think Zack Snyder wants to make any more DC movies, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think he's done with them. I think he's moved on to greener pastures. And again, I'm not trying to knock the Snyderverse. I don't need to go that direction with it. I don't really want that. And I think it's I'm not saying this to you directly, Randall, but I think it's really selfish. I think it's really selfish from the fans at this point to try and continue that. That man lost his daughter making those films. I think it's time to let him move on and let DC find a new way. I'm going to say this again. The future of DC is in Black Adam and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. They are wisely banking everything on him, and I believe that is the future of DC, not the Snyderverse.
And use Flashpoint to reset everything.
Right.
That's it. They've already, in fact, the fact they've already come out and said that the Robert Pattinson Batman is a different universe says everything you need to know. The Snyderverse is done. It's going to be cordoned off as its own little thing. You might get a cameo here in 10 or 15 years if the Black Adam universe continues on its way, right? Or whatever, kind of like what we're getting now with Alfred Molina and Tobey Maguire and all these other guys coming back. But let it be little nods to nostalgia. Do not continue this storyline. It is done, and a lot of us are sick of it.
No, he didn't, Randall. No, he didn't. That was doctored. Randall said Dwayne Johnson said he wants to restore the Snyderverse. That was not real. I don't believe that for a second.
So, there you go. Matt brings up maybe have Victor Stone play for an XFL team instead of a Gotham College team. Good. There you go, Randall. We're in agreement. Whatever The Rock wants to do, that's what DC should do. I think that we can agree on that point. Whatever The Rock wants to do.
Have you been watching Young Rock? Because that show is phenomenal.
I haven't because they took a mid-season break and then I lost momentum.
You need to get back into it. I'm telling you right now, every episode since that break will have you dying. You need to watch that again, especially the episode afterwards. There's something that happens with his mother that I had to pause it. I was laughing so hard.
Well,
Get back into
I
Young
will
Rock.
have to.
Watch
I will
Young
have to
Rock.
watch it again. Again, I don't watch a lot of television. The worst thing that could happen for me just getting into a TV show is to take a mid-season break.
Yeah, I don't know
Like,
why
it
they
just-
did that. I don't know why they did that, but jump back in. I promise you will not regret it.
Yeah, so I will have to try to find time now to watch that, because I had a routine going about when I would watch it, and then it disappeared, and then I'm like, okay, and then I put something else in the time of that routine. So that's the thing. Again, going back to the very beginning of the show, talking about baseball players, and that people in general like to have routines, and The Rock broke my routine. I'm sorry.
But that's what video on demand is for.
Well, that's the thing is that I would do it on video on demand, but I would do it on Saturdays, and now, like,
Oh,
I've got Outriders to play. I've got video games again. So
right.
that's it.
Ray, watch Young Rock. If you smell what Lee is suggesting.
Speaking of video games, just quickly want to bring this up since we were also talking about Spider-Man. Miles Morales, the Spider-Man that helped launch the PS5, Spider-Man Miles Morales video game. This makes me feel good. Well outselling The Last of Us 2. Easily the best-selling game that Sony's had over the past year. Not only great because it is just Spider-Man and Marvel. It's another win for them. Also really feel good for the guys over in Insomniac. They're all fantastic. But also, again, kind of proving the point that we've been saying all along is that we didn't need a sequel to The Last of Us. And yeah, it's just that. I mean, look, I'm sure that, like, a lot of the people who like The Last of Us, that's fine. That's your prerogative. I refuse to pay money for that game at this point, because to me, The Last of Us ended after The Last of Us 1. There's no reason for me to go back to that universe. There was no reason for Sony to go back to that universe. And so it makes me feel good that their best-selling game of the past year is Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Why is this a
that
surprise to anyone that a G-rated game beat an R-rated game? I don't know why that's... Yeah. That, by the way, that happens to be one of the biggest IP properties of history. I don't know why... And PlayStation. I don't know why that's such a shock to anyone. So, that didn't make sense to me that people were upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big deal. I think it's, again, sometimes folks... When certain properties do or do not well, or they're surpassed by other properties, there's this brand loyalty, and it feels like that they're insulted, and it's like,
it's ridiculous, man.
No, it's just this was going to happen. I feel bad because third on the list was Ghost of Tsushima, which was my game of the year last year. To me, Ghost of Tsushima. No, I love Spider-Man Miles Morales. Don't get me wrong, but to me, Ghost of Tsushima was the best game out of those three by far. I don't even have to play The Last of Us 2 to know that.
If you want a sports analogy, this would be like if the Pittsburgh Pirates made the playoffs, and then the Yankees beat them, and people were like, but how could the Yankees, of all the teams, beat us, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who don't win yar? I mean, that's what it sounds like. It's like, give me a break, man.
Yeah.
I'm not negating how big of a game The Last of Us is. It's just like, guys, this is not comparable. It's like a rated. What is that? T for teen, or is that like what is that?
I think it's T for teen. Yeah, Spider-Man, and obviously Last of Us was M for mature.
Right, right. It's my point. M for mature is going to automatically take you out of that running. So weird.
That's also true. That's very true. That is a fact that E10 plus and T games typically sell the best in video games, and mature, and then E for everyone.
I wouldn't let my son play that game. I'd let him play Miles Morales though.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing there. Randall says he wants the new Aliens game. That's not Colonial Marines. It's called something else. Aliens Colonial Marines is something completely different, Randall. And that was a terrible game from several years ago. The new Aliens game, though, is a multiplayer only game. I am not interested in that personally. Been hurt too much by the Alien franchise. I liked Alien Isolation, but I think that franchise, too, in particular, especially in the video game realm, is desperately grasping at straws now. I think they saw what happened. Especially, we saw this with Predator last year, right? It was a good idea, but it was poorly implemented as a multiplayer-only game, and that fell flat in its face shortly after launch. I think you're going to get something similar with this Aliens game, honestly. Speaking of things falling flat in their face in movie properties, and the movies in general, this is a big story this week. I got a lot of guff online because I basically said that this is... try and turn a negative into a positive, that a lot of movie theaters around the country are shutting down. But a big one here, a big chain out in the LA area, the ArcLight Pacific Theaters are going to be shutting down as well. I think that, and I said, look, turn this into a positive. Turn the space into something the community can use. Turn it into a park. Turn it into a shelter. Turn it into Turn it into a recreational area. Turn it into to something. Turn it into low-income housing, right? There's so many other things that these spaces could be used. And again, it's sad that it's happening, but this was inevitable. And we've talked about it before on the show, that all the pandemic did was accelerate this. The movie theater industry was going away. Every movie theater that I went to as a kid was gone by 2005. Not saying now. They were moved. They were taken out. The Franklin Steakhouse in Nutley, New Jersey. I mentioned that because I know Lee and I have been there together. That used to be the Franklin Theater, right? And the Franklin Theater was pushed out because the people who owned the building kept raising the rent, and they turned it into an apartment complex and a steakhouse. It's just what the community needed more of at the time. Right? Like actually it was actually good income housing, decent income housing, not low income and not high income, but like medium income housing for Nutley, which isn't bad and it was needed at the area and the time. And the thing is a lot of folks are also complaining here in LA, but it's like, but it's an iconic theater. It has that big ugly dome in the middle. Look, folks, I've been to the theater. I've been to the Cinerama Dome, which is one of the ArcLight theaters. The place was a dump. All right, it was overpriced. It doesn't look like it was made in the early 60s. It doesn't look like it's been upgraded since the early 60s, right? It's a sticky movie theater floor like every sticky movie theater floor, okay? The technology has advanced to the point where, look, I saw arcades die in my lifetime. I've seen drive-in movie theaters were dead before my lifetime. And if they survive as a gimmick. There are arcades now as barcades. There are drive-through theaters still around as a gimmick in places. And now you're going to see this happen with the movie theaters. There'll be a gimmick, if anything, right? You'll see one every 50 miles. It'll be a $25 a ticket experience. The same way the live theater is kind of a gimmick or a night out or kind of a rarity, right? Like it's something that is only done as a true luxury at this point because... But I think that the thing about those things, obviously, is that live theater has a different energy and you never know what's going to happen. There's variables you don't get with a movie theater experience. I'm not knocking the fact that the movie theaters are going away. I'm sad about it too. But I'm also a realist. And I'm saying that take advantage of this because the last thing, especially with LA, with how terribly they do everything out here, turn these spaces into something that people can use. All right? Because there's a lack of efficiency out here in usage of space as is, and I think that this is an opportunity. This could be seen as an opportunity for the community, even though it sucks for the movie theaters.
Well, you said it all there, Ray. Look, we've been talking about this for a year on here, that the pandemic was going to change theaters. People didn't go to the movies, and they went bankrupt, and it's time to move on. That's evolution. That's period. The home experience is... I don't want to say equivalent, but it is advanced enough to the point you don't need to go to the theater to see a movie and enjoy it. You can get yourself an 80-inch TV that it's kind of affordable now, to be perfectly honest with you, if you just manage your money a little bit. Good speakers. You don't need to go to the theaters like you used to. I love going to the theater. I'm going to say this again. I love going to the theater, but theaters need to evolve. Fishy Mobile just said that, surely somebody else is going to buy it. They might. Another theater company might. We've talked this before. I don't know why Disney doesn't buy a bunch of these old theaters and make a Disney experience where they can show the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Mandalorian in the theaters. So, again, you can go back and listen to any of our episodes. We talked about this in extensively. Again, first live episode. But, no, theaters need to evolve. I believe they will. I believe that new chains will be born. It's a Phoenix situation. Things will rise from the dust, and Ray should not be persecuted for suggesting housing for the poor. I mean, if you're really putting a movie theater over housing for the poor in California, something's messed up with your priorities on that one, because there is a massive crisis going on in that state with that.
Yeah. I mean, and look, and I get it. There's a lot of problems out here, too. There's way too many luxury apartment buildings in LA. Rent is way too high in general, which, again, there are a lot of problems out here. And people are like, well, some of these theaters aren't zoned for that. And I'm like, well, guess what? The government can rezone things. You can like this isn't hard, folks. I'm sorry that I suggested turning a negative into a positive. But again, like Lee said, technology's gotten to the point where we can get over this. And Randall, that's a good point too. Turn it into an esports arena. There's other options here.
Evolve. That's the point. Evolve. Just showing movies and charging an exorbitant amount of money for popcorn is not going to work anymore. Evolve. We're for that. Again, Randall, we've talked about this many times on the show. Disney, I fully expect Disney to buy theaters and make a Disney experience where it's going to cost $25 to get in, but it's going to be worth every penny. All right. Disney's already shown that they can get people to give them money. All right. All of the movies they're putting on Disney Plus are making millions of dollars. It did work. We predicted that the Premier Access would totally work. And guess what? It has totally worked. So it's not going away anytime soon. That's the future. The way of the future. The way of the future. The way of the future. For those of you who've seen
it's
that
just
movie.
it is what it is. Yeah, and exactly, Matt. Exactly. You can turn to ushers and concession servers into Disney characters. You can do it like a thing, like the NBC pages, right? Like everybody knows at NBC, if you go to the Rockefeller Center, the pages and whatnot, you can do the same thing at the theaters if Disney were to buy them. But you can repurpose these things. And Fishy brings up a good point in chat, saying, "Well, with the audio, though."
Yeah, we're not denying that point, Fishy, as Ray just said about the audio. We're just saying that it's very convenient to stay home. Again, I love going to the movies. I'm not against the movies, but. Like if you think I'm gonna spend $20 for sound, you're crazy. All right, like it can't just be that. I mean, so I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that the at-home experience is at a point now it can compete, and it has.
Yeah, and I would also argue that especially out here in LA, movie theaters do a disservice to a lot of the local economies, because like when I would go out back east, we'd get dinner, then we'd go to the theater, we'd go do something else after the theater.
If you come back east,
everything out here in LA, because sorry, what was that, Lee?
If you come back east, it'll happen again.
Yeah, no, exactly. The thing is that in LA, parking's expensive. If you want to go to a lot of theaters, especially the good ones, which are usually where the ArcLight, this particular chain always charges for parking, right? They give you a validation. Yeah. But usually the validation is only for the length of the movie. So if you want to go to dinner in the area and continue to support that particular local area, you're also going to end up paying for parking, at least at some point, for something, right? If you go and get dinner and the movie, you're paying for parking. That is the worst thing to do for most people.
Look,
like
this
that,
is
right,
the truth,
that right there.
This is the truth.
And yes, Randall, Uber is expensive.
Going to a movie,
typically in LA by my standards.
Going to a movie with a friend, I'm not even going to use a family, is a $50 minimum experience right now. Okay, a lot of people, it's not 15, it's $13. I do the matinee, I get the kids pack. It's only $20 when you. That's great.
You have to bend over backwards.
Right. Well, my point is that the individual moviegoer is one thing, but the truth is this: most people go to movies in groups, and it's minimum $50. Now, people are like, "Oh, Premier Access is too expensive for $30 for a movie." No, it's not. I can watch it as many times as I want. I can, you're crazy. It's a deal to me, right? And again, a family of 4 going to the movies, that's a $75 minimum day. Like it's just, again, personal finance is personal finance, but one person versus a family of 4. I definitely got Raya and The Last Dragon. We've watched it 15 times. I've already made my money back on it if you think about it. So just, I'm going to do the same thing with Black Widow. I'm totally blind Black Widow in my house. And again, yes, enough people, and I'm saying this, I'm not saying this lightly, enough people can afford that it's going to happen. All right. I know that it is expensive for some people. Don't get me wrong. All right. But right. Disney's focused on
going
the
to the movies in general was more expensive.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I'll tell you this right now. You are definitely spending $30 if you're going to a movie theater. The day, the experience. Right? It's unlikely you're not.
And especially here in LA.
Yeah.
Especially here in LA. I haven't every movie theater ticket, the cheapest here is $16 a ticket for an adult.
Plus parking, plus food,
plus food, gas, time, aggravation to get there. Right. It's not convenient.
And here's the other thing
even
too.
Before the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, it wasn't a good experience.
I want to enjoy myself at the movie. I want to have the big popcorn. I want to have the big soda. Right? Like, yes. I want that. I can get it at home if I can't get it there. So that's where I'm at.
Exactly. Randall says, I'll wait for it to be free,
sure.
quote unquote, on Disney Plus.
But you're going to be at home.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's Casey used the bad word, language. Movies are a waste though, because there's also sometimes you just get a bunch of jerks in the theater too. You also run that risk. Sometimes people are terrible, but it's okay.
Only on days.
But yeah, there's. I mean, the thing is look, and again, we're not ragging on the theater experience. There's also one person I love who attacked me, who's like, "Well, I can walk to the theater." well, you are very much in the minority, ma'am. Like, and if in LA you can walk to the theater, you probably make enough money where you can stream, you can pay $30 for Disney Plus.
Right.
I promise you that. Like, anyway, enough on this subject. And also, Matt brings up a good point. Isn't it just better to watch movies in your underwear? Sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah. And Randall says it's $12 for a ticket in Tampa. He never eats at the theater though. Yeah, but if it was affordable, wouldn't you want to have a snack at the theater? Wouldn't you want to? Like, I mean, it's well, and then Randall, he goes to McDonald's afterwards. Again, though, you can't even do that here in LA because then you have to pay for parking. At some point, they're going to get you. And again, that's why I don't mind at all that these theaters are closing. And again, the whole point
I'm
of the
going to do
post-
something here. Hold on. Randall, again, this is live, so I'm going to do this. Randall, how many times did you see Justice League in the theater or any of the Snyderverse films? Did you see them more than once? And be honest with me. Okay, because if you saw them more than once and went to McDonald's both times, you're already over the $30 that Disney charges. Okay, so one of the brilliant part of Premier Access is I can watch it multiple times. All right, so I can still go to McDonald's. I can walk to the McDonald's, Ray. Can't walk to the theater.
There you go. So that we wanted to bring that up. And of course, one of the big things that is also accelerating, this wasn't just the pandemic, but of course, a lot of the streaming services that obviously got on board with this very quickly. And one of the big ones was HBO Max. And HBO Max was actually, them even more than Disney, didn't even do a premiere access. They were like Wonder Woman 84, day and date for theaters. It's on HBO Max. They didn't even do an upcharge, which was a big deal. And that really started to turn the tide, I think, even more for most. And Randall says he saw Man of Steel 3 times in theaters. So there you go. You proved Lee's point. But the big thing is that this week, a lot of people were mad because they delayed Mortal Kombat by a week.
No.
And the reason why they were mad is because they signed up to get the Snyder Cut, and then the reason why HBO Max delayed Mortal Kombat was a week was they realized that in 1 month they had scheduled Snyder Cut, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Mortal Kombat all within that same month. So they pushed Mortal Kombat out of that subscription to keep you subscribing. Now look, it's not the best. It's obvious. It's pretty obvious that that's what they did. It's not the best tactic, but it's also understandable. They're trying to make their money too. It's a thing that I think that it would have been better for people if they got 3 free movies to really try and sell the service. But also, there's a lot of people who did only show up for the Snyder Cut. Lee, I want to get your thoughts on this, because again, HBO's got to make their money too, and there were a fair amount of people who after Snyder Cut canceled their subscriptions. What do you think about the delay of Mortal Kombat just to try to get people to subscribe for a second month? I think it's a little underhanded, but it's also not the worst business tactic in the world. I get it.
I think it means Mortal Kombat's not that great of a film. That's what I think it means.
That's also probably true.
I think that from a business standpoint, I get it, but I'm also, like, the way I would have done it is I would have made such damn good movies that you did not have a choice, that you have to keep the subscription because HBO Max makes really good content. Keep in mind, we're talking about HBO here, okay? They have plenty of IP that is worth something. It's amazing. I remember when Game of Thrones was ending, that they were scrambling to get something because they knew when that show ended, they were going to lose everybody, and they did. I think this means Mortal Kombat's probably not as good as people think it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I think it means that they better get their act together and they better get their Game of Thrones spinoff out, and they better find a way to keep people, or they are going to leave in droves. All right. And again, no excuses. You have DC, you have Warner Brothers, you have everything that HBO's ever made. Figure it out. Yeah. All right. But, no, I would have liked to see the Mortal Kombat be on the initial subscription as a testament of, like, hey, we care about you. But total Warner Brothers move, and then on the other side of this, people would have definitely canceled their subscription. So I get it. But I think it means Mortal Kombat's not as good as people want it to be. Because if it was good, I'd stay.
I've been saying all along Mortal Kombat.
Well, we all have our doubts on Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope I'm wrong. But we'll find out next week and expect a full spoiler cast next week.
Right. So
for here on Geeks Like Sports.
Randall also just said, Randall says he bought a promotional card and saw Batman v Superman 8 times. So, Randall, again, you are proving my point right now. I understand the love of the theater, though. And if that's how you want to spend your money, by all means do it. But I'm just saying, from an economical standpoint, it makes more sense to stay home, keeping in mind, too, that Batman v Superman was not out during a pandemic, and the only way to see it was to go to the theater over and over again.
And actually, that means you spent more per ticket than you typically did seeing it 8 times, because that $100, you actually spent $12.50 a ticket instead of $12, which is what you were saying you were typically paying. So you actually spent a little bit more per ticket for those.
I'm
for
sure
that,
he had
that
some money
promotional
left
card.
over. The ticket prices didn't go up. But yes, I understand where you're going.
I'm just saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, look, Randall, again, he's defending the theater. He has a better experience in the theater than at home.
Theater.
Home's relaxing.
I love the theater, too. I do. It takes you away from everything. I'm with you. I'm just stating the obvious, that they need to evolve. That's it.
Yeah. He also brings up the good point that you can pause at home and go to the bathroom, which you can't do at the theater, which is also a big thing, especially now that I'm in my 30s and I drink too much water. So that is a very big deal for me, for those of you who don't know what happens when you get older. But yeah, so it's a very good point from Randall as well. Moving on now into video games real quick, as Fishy, of course, Fishy with the hydrate.
Oh,
For those of you who don't know, when we do then we have things in Twitch on the chat. So Lee just finished his tea. I just took a sip of my water. When people spend points in the chat, we have to do the little dance. So we just had to immediately had to take a sip of water. And Matt, that's why he has wireless headphones. Fun. Moving into video games, Microsoft continues to buy everyone. This was a big deal. This is actually not in the video game space as much, but it could be used there. But it is interesting. It's more in the medical space. They spent $20 billion for Nuance.
Billion.
Yeah, billion with a B.
B.
B as in boy, billion as in oh boy, that's a lot of money. Microsoft spent $20 billion on Nuance AI, which is primarily used in the medical field to help make diagnoses and predictions and things like that. This is a big acquisition, not just for them, as Microsoft continues to expand its reach into every part of our lives, much like you see the Microsoft tablets on every NFL sideline and everything else, trying to make themselves a diverse and diversified company. But this is a big deal. This goes to show, again, just how much money Microsoft has and how much they are willing to spend. And don't believe for a second that they're not going to possibly try and convert this AI to use things beyond the medical field. Not just saying video games, but a lot of other things. That's when you spend that kind of money on an AI program in a company, you've got big plans for the future. And I think that Microsoft is again continuing to show their strength here in the technical field. This was a big purchase. Lee, what are your thoughts on Microsoft continuing to try to conquer the world?
Ray, I think that we're going to get a new release of Surgeon Simulator, and that's the only reason they spent $20 billion to acquire this, so it could be more accurate than ever before. Look, I'm going to say what I always say when Microsoft buys something. They are in charge. They are large. They are going to be the only game in town outside Nintendo in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. They are making tectonic plate moving moves. They are not messing around. They are going for the kill, and they are doing it. Sony cannot compete with that. And I'm telling you, every property that comes up, if Sony wants it, they're not going to get it because Microsoft is. So if anything was going to come up for sale, Ray, and Microsoft wants it, they're going to get it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Real quick, Randall mentions he likes that Microsoft is actually helping GameStop a bit and working with them. That is because at the moment, there's still a lot of rural areas where you can't get your games easily via the internet. Until America improves its infrastructure, which we are working on, as Drew gets a dab there in chat for those of you who are watching it.
I'm not dabbing.
It's fine. You don't have to let dab, Lee. It's
dab.
okay. But basically, once the infrastructure catches up, I really think, Randall, Microsoft's going to pull out of GameStop because they're not going to, as soon as they get the digital delivery service everywhere they want to have it, Microsoft doesn't need brick and mortar stores anymore. Drew, Lee refuses to dab. Drew, I'm sorry. I can't make him dab. We're 2,500 miles away. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting to see what happens. As of right now, Microsoft's hedging their bets. They realize that, especially in rural parts of the country, they still need GameStop. In places along the coast, they don't. And that's only going to improve, again, and continue as technology progresses, as Wi-Fi and fiber optics improves and reaches the more rural areas of the country, which right now there is an infrastructure bill to do just that. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft turns tail and says, bye-bye, GameStop, you're on your own. Glad you're enjoying the show, Drew. Much appreciated. Finally, and speaking of Microsoft buying things, this is a big deal. This was brought up by Bloomberg Japan. They mentioned that there are several companies interested in acquiring Square Enix. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you a little video game history here. Square and Enix used to be separate companies. They merged way back in the day to save themselves. In fact, Square is notoriously one of the worst money managers in video games. They've been this close to folding literally 7 times in my life. Starting back then, it was Final Fantasy. The reason why it was called Final Fantasy, that was supposed to be Square's last game, and that single game saved that company. But again, they merged with Enix later on. They've also brought in places like Crystal Dynamics, Eidos, other publishers under their wings, and they've really kind of turned themselves into this really weird amalgamation of 2 companies. There's Square Enix Japan, there's Square Enix North America. 2 completely different mindsets, 2 completely different brands of games. Square Enix Japan is very much RPG-driven, JRPG specifically. Square Enix North America, you're talking Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, action-driven, big bombastic games, Avengers, things like that, right? And it's kind of proven, especially over the past few years, that Square Enix Japan overvalues some of the North American properties to the point where Tomb Raider, even after selling 4 million copies 7 years ago, the company almost went bankrupt on that because they expected so much more. It did end up making its money back in the long run, but they were expecting a bigger seller than it was. And again, this also shows that this is a company that has historically mismanaged their funds. And again, it feels like they're 2 different companies. Anyway, the long and short of it is that there are supposedly all 3 major publishers, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, are interested in acquiring Square Enix. No offer has been made. Square Enix has said they are not for sale, which of course you say that until Microsoft offers you a blank check. But then, it's one of those things where it'd be very interesting to see if this happened, because again, Microsoft's been buying up everybody and their mom. Sony desperately needs an exclusive. Nintendo has been working the most closely with Square Enix lately, including having another exclusive coming out in July in The World Ends With You. What's happening here in the game industry? I don't know, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's an exciting time to be watching things as the big 3 are really becoming the biggest 3. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Well, one, you're a massive gaming nerd, that you know way too much about this stuff, and that I respect you for it quite a bit. That's my first thought. No, look, again, it echoes what I've been saying, that the powers are shifting, and then you got to keep your ear close to the ground. And like you said, if Microsoft puts a price out there that's large enough, yeah, I think they're going to go for it. Randall did ask us, Ray, that if Microsoft offered to buy Geeks Like Sports, what would the selling price be? Randall, what I would do is I'd say no thanks to Microsoft, and I'd let the world know that Microsoft just tried to buy us, thus increasing our value exponentially, bringing in multiple sponsors, therefore eclipsing the offer that Microsoft had in the first place, making both Ray and I very, very rich and powerful people, until Microsoft sends their agents, perhaps a U.S. agent, to find us, kill us, thus making us immortal after our names have been drugged through the blood, making Geeks Like Sports the greatest podcast that has ever existed.
And that's why Lee's the business guy of this, the business side of all of this. I just talk a lot. Lee knows all that. Knows all that other stuff. I'm just a rambler. But
yeah, that's all you are, Ray.
I mean, Randall, that's also a good thing. Maybe Microsoft should buy. Actually, Randall, there was a rumor that Warner Brothers' video game division, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, was for sale for a while. Supposedly, it still might be. I would not be surprised if that Microsoft tried to sweep in and buy like NetherRealm, who does Injustice and Mortal Kombat, and tried to swoop in and get all the video game rights, especially, again, considering Sony has a lot of the Marvel rights, specifically Spider-Man. So that could be on the table. But, I think that would be, Caitlin, Lee just killed us. But it's okay. Like he said, we're immortal. Our names will live on in infamy. It's okay. Daily Dunkin' would get it done. Actually, I don't have Dunkin' today. I have Jack in the Box coffee today. But I love my Dunkin'. Everyone knows that. Usually, I run on Dunkin', especially on Wednesdays when we do Mighty Ducks Game Changers on
Ray, did you know that
Streamlabs.io.
we have a Dunkin' Donuts down the street from where I live, and a Starbucks, and multiple places, even a Krispy Kreme, Ray? There's lots of places to get donuts and coffee where I live.
Lee, I think that's pretty much nationwide. I have all that here, too.
You don't.
Yeah, I do.
You don't.
They actually just opened another Starbucks, literally a block away from another Starbucks. So I don't have to. I have to walk one block less.
Ray, cheesesteaks though. Diners. Yep.
I have cheesesteaks here.
No,
they're actually pretty
don't.
good. It's
Don't
a place called Philly's
you've
Best. They
crossed
say they
the
fly
line.
everything from
Now
Philly.
you've crossed the line. You do not have cheesesteaks there. You have Philadelphia cheesesteaks, which are not cheesesteaks. Don't ever cross that line, nor the diner line. You know the diners out there are not comparable. You know it. You know
No,
it in
that
your
is
heart.
true. The diners out here, the pizza out here is horrendous. No, those are all true. Those are all true. Yes, I know Caitlin and Lee are in Philly, though. I understand that. I get that. Yes. The people aren't there. I understand. But yeah, no, it would be very interesting to see if Microsoft were to try to buy Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, would try to buy, or Square Enix again. But again, Sony and Nintendo also not supposedly slouching on this. Again, it would be a big deal for Sony to because it would bolster them as the JRPG system. It would also bolster Nintendo because, again, Octopath Traveler, Square Enix has renewed their relationship with Nintendo after things went sour with Final Fantasy VII back in the late 90s because Nintendo refused to go to a disc drive, and Square Enix was like, we can't put Final Fantasy on a cartridge. We need to go to a disc, and Sony was, at the time, the premier disc-based system. So that's been interesting to see what happens. Casey's threatening to kidnap me now. Fantastic. That is a felony, Casey. I would not have put that into a live chat, but that's okay. Should Starbucks get into the movie business? So, Randall, that's actually a thing out here in LA. All the Starbucks are in all the grocery stores. Because especially out here, you need something to keep your nerves settled when you go to the grocery store in LA. But yeah, I don't know what the solution is to save movie theaters. I don't know if they need to be. I mean, look, again, I'm all for progress, but we'll see what ends up happening there. And yes, Matt brings up Starbucks got into television with Game of Thrones. So there you go. But yeah, so
and this cinnamon dolce latte with soy milk and blonde espresso are both coming with me. Please hold the whip.
So there you go. But yeah, Microsoft throwing its weight around. I would not be surprised if Microsoft acquired Square Enix. I wouldn't be surprised if anybody did because, again, Square Enix is notorious for being some of the worst financially managed video game companies in history. So yeah, JC, we are still live. We are wrapping things up though here as JC went to work and has come back now. So JC291, welcome back. So that brings us to our mashup of the week.
Mashup of the week. It's the mashup of the week. The mashup of the week. Yeah. Live.
There we go. Bringing it to a close. Going to land the plane here. The mashup of the week is we talk about baseball instant replay, and that needs to be fixed. Which comic book moment would you have wanted instant replay in that moment? Not going back and retconning it, in that moment. Like literally as you read that comic book, as you got those issues for the week or the month, what moment would you have instantly replayed and overturned in that moment? Lee, you want to go first?
Mephisto, Spider-Man, ruining the universe. Done.
Damn it, that was mine.
We agree. No, come on. We knew we were.
Sure.
I knew you were going to have the same one as me. Thanks for letting me go first. No, I knew you'd have the same one as me. I knew you would.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is One More Day. One of the most horrendous storylines that Marvel has ever done that, for me, basically killed Spider-Man that I never wanted to. I never picked up a Spider-Man comic after that. Obviously, I still have the character, play the video games, see the movies, but I haven't picked up a Spider-Man comic since 2007 when that happened, and I think that was one of the worst things they ever did for the character. And so for me, Spider-Man does not exist after 2007. 40 great years, 45 great years or so. One of my favorite characters.
Horrible what they did.
Yeah, it was. I would never have done that.
Are not. I mean, they're kind of replays. They're things I wouldn't have ended. I would not have ended Tag and Binks by Dark Horse Comics, which is a really funny comics that follows two characters named Tag and Binks as they somehow find themselves in the middle of the Star Wars universe when everything's going on and give an alternate point of view. And then the other one is, this is one that if you haven't read, I don't usually recommend people go back in time and read comic books, but this is one of them, the entire Deadpool and Cable series, which is probably the funniest thing I've ever read. Ever.
Yeah.
Deadpool and Cable and Deadpool. Comic book is unbelievable.
Well, I think that's the thing too. I think it's sad when there's a lot of great comics that end after 50 or 60 issues. Shadow of the Bat, Batman Shadow of the Bat was a great monthly that DC did for a few years, where it felt like old school comics, where you had a lot of one-off adventures in that book, or maybe only 2 or 3 issues. Right. One of the big problems with comics nowadays, I tell people we talk about, is that it feels like if you don't get comics for 7 or 8 months, you're lost.
Right.
And that all these storylines just keep going forever and ever and ever. I mean, again, it's what I complain about Tom King's run. It's like you wanted to do an 80 issue like Batman story. You wanted to tie all that together. It just that is counterintuitive to getting people to buy comics, and especially to get new people to buy comics.
You know, Ray, one of the things we spoke about on the show that I want to revisit, and I'd love to get the audience's thought on this. We've held a lot of people the entire 2.5 hours we've been on, which is, thank you so much all, by the way, for listening to this or watching this live. And those of you that are listening to it not live, thank you for being here as well. But one of the things I think the comic book industry should really, really look into is releasing actual books again. Give me a 500-page, 300-page comic book anthology series where everything's together and charge me for it. I would love that. Right? And the thing is that, you know, especially during the pandemic, I don't know why they didn't do this. Just say, look, you know what? You can't come to the comic book store. This is what's going to happen. Every 3 months, we're going to have a new book out. Okay? And again, look, there are some that can do it, like what Kevin Eastman's doing with The Last Ronin in Turtles. He's doing that completely right. You know what I mean? In the sense of it's not every week. There's plenty of time between issues. It'll come out as a book at the end. Like, I would like to see more comic books do that. But, like, look, man, you can't see them here, but I got a shelf of actual, like, anthology books of comics, and I love them because you can pick them up, you can read them quick, and they feel like you get the story. And, you know, if I step away for a few months, I'm not lost. I don't know why we're not doing that more right now.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Randall brings up a good one. This is another great one. I think I blocked this from my mind too. A 4-issue series with Spider-Man where Norman Osborn basically, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Randall, but he basically rapes her, Gwen Stacy.
That is what
Norman Osborn basically.
Yes.
Yeah, and he then basically forces her to, or I can't remember exactly, but she has his twins who he then artificially ages to fight Spider-Man. That was a horrible 4-issue arc. Which, again, it just feels like, I get it. There's obviously a lot of tie-ins between Gwen Stacy, Norman Osborn, and Spider-Man. Obviously, Green Goblin kills Gwen Stacy, his first real love. There's a big deal. But that felt like, talk about, like, dishonoring the memory of a character. Like, holy cow. Like, that was just too far.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely terrible for sure. One of the worst. Those Spider-Man runs there, especially in the mid-2000s, leading up to One More Day, everything they really kind of just didn't know what they were doing. And I think that Dan Slott afterwards, 'cause I did read a little bit with like Spider Island, I really feel like we haven't had a great Spider-Man writer in over a decade, and it really you can really tell.
Not in comics. We had great Spider-Man.
Correct. Not in the comics.
And film, right?
Yes.
But not in the comics. Randall asked probably the last question of the day, which is that. Or last comment, I should say. He said that if he had the power, he'd lower the cost of single-issue comics. And Randall, listen, I agree with you, but it's just not realistic. It's not the way businesses work. And like I said, sometimes you have to up the cost to build the value. There are just not as many people reading comic books anymore. And unfortunately, if you want people to pay less for them, you got to up the value of the comic book. And the thing is, and this is what kills me at the comic book industry, is that you've never had a more lucrative time to get people into comic books. Ever. Yeah. Okay, the movies are exploding. The shows are exploding. For some reason, Marvel and DC have not done a good job as a company, keeping in mind that they're owned by different people, of redirecting people to the comic books, right? You want more Falcon? Go check out the comic books. I've never heard that one time, right? So it's amazing. But he says the Kickstarter is the future of comic books, in the independent comic for sure. It's the start of independent everything, but lowering the cost is not realistic. Building the value and charging more, that's actually realistic to me, right? Might not sound fair, but I actually think you're getting a better product. That's the business side of this.
Yeah. And Randall also mentions that J. Michael Straczynski said that the Norman Osborn story was his editor's idea. He also blamed his editors for One More Day. And at some point, the writer needs to take a little bit of credit and maybe stand up to his editors, because those were two of the worst stories of the 2000s. And at some point, and J. Michael Straczynski is a good writer. He's written some great stuff. But then you need to blow the whistle sooner than 10 years after the fact, and we're to the point where basically, again, you turned off a ton of people to Spider-Man comics. With that said, And Casey also brings up a good point. Fans, everybody needs to stop gatekeeping. That is also a good point. And allow things to evolve. That is also a huge problem. But now, 2.5 hours into episode 105, we are going to land this plane. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Your comments have been great. We really appreciate everybody here who tuned in live. If you're listening later after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those funds, we also appreciate you. Please go to the Facebook group, the Instagram, Twitter. Join in the conversation there. We will be happy to talk to you there as well. We were actually arguing about wrestling before we even started the show today with our good buddies Dan and Derek. So we really appreciate everybody, of course, who listens to us however you listen to us. But we also really appreciate everybody here on Twitch. You have been a fantastic live audience. We're going to start doing this every week now, every Saturday. Be sure to stay tuned to my schedule on Twitch to get the time. We went a little bit later than we normally will today, but thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, go to the Facebook group, the Instagram, the Twitter. We are everywhere on social media. Also, you can find me and Lee personally there, or email us at Lee or Ray at geekswholikesports.com. You can talk to us personally if you have a question that you don't want to ask publicly. We're more than happy to talk to you all. Thank you all so much, though, for tuning in. It really does mean a lot. Lee, any parting words?
Be well.
On that, for Lee, I'm Ray. Good night, everybody. Take it easy. We will see you next week for episode 106. Good night.